wasn't sure whether I was going to or, yeah, I was gonna be at both places at once. But I was never summoned, so.
All right, go ahead, Ed. Let them know.
Is Kevin Slattery here tonight?
Okay, I'm going to call to order this meeting of the September 13th, 2018 City of Nashua Planning Board. Mr. Secretary, can you call the roll?
Yes. Mayor Donches. Mike Peterson.
Present.
Scott Leclerc, Chair.
Here.
Adam Varley, Vice Chair.
Here.
Ed Weber, Secretary, here. Alderman David Tenza.
Present.
Alderman Marianne Mazzagola. Steve Ducrane. David Robbins.
Present.
Jerry Rapucci. Maggie Harper.
Here.
Okay, so we have one open position right now, so Maggie, you would be participating in discussion and voting. All right, thanks. So we have in front of us the minutes from the August 9th, 2018 City Planning Board meeting. Has anybody had a chance to take a look at them and want to make a motion either way, whether they're ready for acceptance?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve as written from Mr. Robbins. Any second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Varley. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Oh, okay, so motion passes. All right, communications, Roger, Linda?
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of Planning Board. If you pick up your packet, and I'll go through it quickly. The board has an amended agenda tonight. There are two new other business items appointing membership on the National Regional Planning Commission as well as the Capital Improvements Committee.
Okay,
You also have an invitation for a public hearing in the town of Merrimack for the F.E. Everett widening project. That's dated October 3rd, which is a Wednesday night at 7 p.m. at the Merrimack High School, if anyone's interested. That's the widening project is being proposed from exit 8 north towards Manchester. There's a map in your packet.
okay.
You have a communication on case number 4 from the attorney representing the applicant. And on case number 8, which is 6569 Gilson Road, you have 3 items, or 3 communications. One is a copy of the condominium documents. You have a communication from the EPA or DES on the conditions of a site. And lastly, you have a communication from an abutter with concerns dated September 13th. And lastly, you have under other business item number 2, you have a recommendation from the city engineer's office on this Conant Road street discontinuance. He recommends in favor of final passage of that item. And he's attached, he's given a new map which is revised, which is in your packet. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Report of committee and liaison, Ed?
Yes, 59 Concord came before the Historical District Commission. Fortunately for the Historical District, they made a mistake. They didn't know that they were in the Historical District when they bought the house. Unfortunately, they actually wanted to do it back to its original, so. But they had to have a stop work order and everything, but now they're flying and they're doing a very nice job on and they're doing it historically. So it's a good thing.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the procedure of the meeting and hearings for everybody in the audience here. So after the legal notice of each conditional special use permit, site plan, or subdivision plan is read by myself, the board will first determine if the application is complete and ready to take board jurisdiction. The public hearing will begin at that time, and that's the time for the applicant or their representative to present an overview and a description of their project. They should speak to whether or not they agree with the recommended staff stipulations, and the board will have an opportunity to ask relevant follow-up questions of the applicants or staff. I'll then ask for testimony from the audience. I'm going to first ask for anybody wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan to speak. If you do so choose, please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and this is the time that you can express your concerns or ask any questions you may have regarding the plan. Next, I'll ask for testimony from anybody wishing to speak in favor of the plan. The board will then ask any relevant follow-up questions of the applicant. The applicant will be given a rebuttal period, at which time they'll speak to any of the concerns raised by the public testimony. If there's still some questions on the public side, I'll ask that folks get together and sort of nominate one person to come back for that second question period and speak to any of the concerns raised during the applicant's rebuttal period. After this is completed, the public hearing will end. The board will resume a public meeting, at which time we'll deliberate and vote on the application before us. I'd ask that both sides keep their remarks to the subject in hand and not repeat what has already been said. I want to be fair to everybody and make the best possible decision based on the testimony and considering all applicable approval criteria established in the National Revised Ordinances for conditional special use permits, site plans, and subdivision plans. Thank you for your interest and courteous attention. I'd ask if you do have a cell phone that you put on vibrate or turn it off at this time. Okay, so moving forward with the agenda, old business, conditional special use permits, there are none. Old business site plans, case number 1. That case has been tabled to a date uncertain, and abutters will be re-notified. New business subdivision plan, case number 2. George H. Barnett and Annette H. Southern Barnett owners. Application and acceptance of a proposed 2-lot subdivision. This property is at 50 Raymond Street, Ward 3. This was a item that was postponed from our July 12th, 2018 meeting. So, case number 2. I don't remember, did we table this, or was this just a postponement?
We didn't take jurisdiction.
Okay,
We
so
didn't take
we didn't take jurisdiction. So, can I have a motion at this time? Anybody had a chance to review everything? Ready to take jurisdiction?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Weber. Any second?
I'll second, and I'll just note that, we had originally not accepted it because of some concerns in engineering. Those, based on the communications, have been addressed, so.
Okay, great. So we have a second by Mr. Varley. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes. Mr. Maynard, you're on.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Richard Maynard, professional engineer with Maynard Parkett National, representing the applicants, George and Jeanette Barnett, with regard to their house and property at 50 Raymond Street. The property is in the RA zone, and it's also known as Sheet 47, Lot 134, containing 29,850 square feet of land. At the July 12th Planning Board meeting, the board declined to take jurisdiction and grant the application acceptance and defer the project to this subsequent Planning Board meeting. The plans, especially the existing conditions plans and the grading plan, have been updated. The current plans have a revision date on the left-hand margin of 7/19 and 7/30/18. Some of you may still have the old plans. By letter dated July 31st, the city engineer's office has now signed off on the project. The staff review report by the planning department has not been updated to reflect that yet. The property of concern was originally 2 separate lots created by a subdivision plan recorded at the registry in 1923. In 2004, the previous owner consolidated the 2 lots through a voluntary merger recorded at the registry. We are here tonight to re-subdivide the property back into its original 2 separate lots. The buildable lot to the right is in a depression some 6 to 8 feet below the elevation of Raymond Street. The land drains gradually to the north away from Raymond Street. Vacant lot contains substantial impervious areas, including tennis court, pool, patios, etc. These impervious areas are scheduled to be eliminated when a house is built on this lot. Stormwater runoff will therefore be substantially reduced when these impervious areas are eliminated. There are two waivers requested, one for underground utilities and a second for sidewalks. The sidewalk waiver calls for a contribution of $9,950 for the 199 feet of frontage for both lots. Per recent planning board discussions, if the waiver were only for the 94.5 feet of frontage for the building lot, the contribution would be $47.25. With regard to the suggested stipulations in the old July 12th staff report, stipulation number 2 should be considered to be revised to the frontage of the building lot only, which would mean a contribution of $47.25. And stipulation number 4 has been superseded per the Deputy City Engineer's letter dated July 31st, 2018. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Questions for the applicant? Mr. Barley, go ahead. Yep.
Just a related question to drainage. You said that there's gonna be less runoff after the project. I'm assuming that there's gonna be a reduction in impervious surface. I know you said you're taking up the tennis court, et cetera, but net, there's gonna be a reduction in impervious surface?
Yeah, substantial net decrease because of reducing the impervious area represented by the tennis court, the pool, the patios, and all the, plus, we're gonna add some infiltration basins anyway, so there'll clearly be a reduction in runoff to the north, to the rear.
Thank you.
Mr. Weber?
Thank you. The terrain that is on the, as we look at it, the right side, how does that impact the residents on lot 133? Is it equal to, or do these, because it has a, and it's not shown, it has a, that lot has a retaining wall on it some 5 or 10 feet inside of his lot line. How does that equate to these terrain or contours relate to the ground on his contours on his property?
You're talking about the right rear leach and catch basin.
I'm looking at the 170 down to 162 on the right, the contours, and how they relate to the property
okay.
on.
I understand. What happens is the drainage will end up going along. Right now, the drainage runs somewhat to the right and off the right-hand side property line. That'll continue that drainage path. However, when you take out the impervious area and when you put the leach and catch basin in, you significantly reduce the amount of runoff in that particular area. So
It's not
I'll call it-
significant.
it's lessened runoff, therefore it's a positive impact.
Right, right. My concern, my only concern in asking this is, would the water with these contours, would it be more going over to his property because of these contours, or would it be more absorbed in the contour?
It's got nothing to do with the contours themselves, it's the way the directions of the contours are, and the way the contours are, the drainage patterns, the directions will be essentially maintained, if not slightly tilted towards our lot. The main consideration is the leach and catch basins, especially the one on that side, which reduces all that runoff from the front of the lot that would, if it was going to reach there, no longer will. Therefore, no matter what the contours point or direct, there's less water to run off.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board?
This is,
Mr. Barley?
I'm going to ask this question of the board, really, but because we may need input from Mr. Maynard. I just wanted to clarify the recent conclusions that the planning board had come to regarding the sidewalks. And I'm just trying to recall what the guidance was that the planning board had issued on that in terms of, Mr. Bader is suggesting that it would be only the frontage of one lot. And I was not at that meeting, so I just want to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, it was essentially, and folks, well, you can comment, I don't know, maybe we might have to go into the meeting before we get too deep into it. Mr. Maynard, maybe you can just explain how you're calculating it, and then we'll talk about it.
All right, the total frontage for the entire project, including the lot with the house on it and the proposed building lot, totals 199 feet. If you only take the new buildable lot, it's only 94.5 feet. The sidewalk contribution is calculated as $50 per linear foot of frontage. So depending on the recent conclusions that it might only apply to the new building lot, then the contribution would be $47.25. If it was the entire frontage, including the existing house lot, then it would be the $9,700 number.
And are you proposing the driveway reduction?
I have not reduced the driveway out. It's the total frontage. I haven't.
Okay.
See, I don't know the results of all your discussions. I'm going to get rumors. So
All right.
the driveway is included. If you
all I
took the
needed.
driveway out, it's approximately 20 feet, so that would mean you take $1,000 off the 9,000 number if you were going to do that, so.
Okay, we can discuss it, I just want to know how you were calculating.
See, I'm not sure how you guys decided at that special meeting, so.
Yeah. Any other questions, Mr. Maynard? This time? None?
Thanks, folks.
Okay. At this time, I'd ask, is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition to the plan? Go ahead and come forward if there is. No? Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the plan? No? Board questions remaining for the applicant or for staff? So I'll just give my 2 cents on, when we had the meeting last time, the discussion. My recollection is the sidewalk was the part of the lot that would potentially be buildable, and an 18-foot subtraction for the driveway. Is that correct?
My recollection was that it would be the entire frontage
Yeah.
of all the lots,
Yeah.
that we would give each lot 18 feet, which is approximate for a driveway. So when this report was originally written, it was before
was
we had
prior, right.
that discussion. However, the applicant had sent in a letter offering to make a contribution in the amount of $9,950. However, if you take that amount and then you minus out 18 feet for each driveway, that would give them $1,800. So the total contribution would then be $8,150. But, it's up to the board's discretion how they want to, do
Okay.
that.
Yeah, we can talk about it. Okay. Other questions for the applicant at this time? No? Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing then. We'll move into the public meeting. So, discussion?
So on the sidewalk, I would suggest that we request the contribution in a manner consistent with what the guidance was at that meeting. So it sounds like full frontage is less than 36 feet for 2 driveways, so the 8,150.
Okay. Anybody else? Discussion on that?
I would agree.
All right. Any other discussion points you want to make? No? Do we want to talk to the applicant about the 8150? I can open it if anybody wants to, or we can make a motion with that number. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
You should probably ask the applicant if he
that's
agrees.
what I'm thinking too. I
yeah.
just want to get there.
So
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to reopen the hearing for that purpose.
Okay, so we have a motion to reopen the hearing to talk to the applicant with specific direction just to the contribution on the sidewalk. Does it have a second? Second by Mr. Robbins. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I'm going to reopen. Mr. Maynard, could you just indicate whether or not the 8150 would be,
The acoustics are bad over there. Can you say that again?
so would you be amenable to the $8,150 sidewalk contribution as discussed?
I
That'd
think
be
so, yeah.
minus 36.
As I understand it, I think that's correct, yeah.
Okay. That's all we need to know. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant while we're open? No? Okay, at this time, I'm going to close the meeting, or close the hearing. We're back into the public meeting. Any other discussion points? Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Varley?
Make a motion to approve new business number 2, subdivision plan, George H. Barnett and Annette H. Southern Barnett, owners, 2-lot subdivision at 50 Raymond Street, finding that the project does meet the requirements outlined in subdivision NRO section 190-138G. Let's see. With a total of 7 stipulations. The first being a waiver request reading is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. The second also being a waiver request, also reading is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation, but also amending the contribution amount by reducing it from $9,950 to $8,150. Stipulation number 3 is written in the staff report. Stipulation number 4 to be removed, consistent with further discussions between the applicant and the engineering department resolving those matters. And then 5, 6, 7, and 8 to be renumbered and as written in the staff report.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Varley to approve with the stipulations as he indicated. Do we have a second on that?
Second?
Second by Mr. Weber. Do we have any further discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? None? Motion passes. Thanks.
Thank you, folks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to case number 3. New business subdivision plan, case number 3, estate of Carl J. Klarman, as the applicant. Application acceptance of proposed 2-lot subdivision. Property is located at 20 Kipling Street. This is in Ward 8. This was postponed from the August 9th, 2018 meeting. Do I have has anybody had a chance to go ahead and take a look at this? Say we're ready to take jurisdiction. This would be an earlier packet. Okay.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the application is complete and ready for us to accept jurisdiction.
All right, so we have a motion to take jurisdiction. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Harper. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Motion passes. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Chad Brannon. I'm a civil engineer with Fieldstone Land Consultants. Our office is located at 206 Elm Street in Milford, New Hampshire. And tonight, I'll be representing the owner, the estate of Carl J. Carlman, and the applicant, Rising Homes Elite LLC, with their application to subdivide tax map parcel B-230. The subject property has a physical address of 20 Kipling Street and is located at the intersections of Shelley Drive with Kipling Street and Scott Avenue. The property consists of 1.224 acres of land and is currently occupied by a single-family house, which was built in the late 1950s with associated site improvements. The existing improvements on the property are located on the west section along Kipling Street. Zoning for the property is B, suburban residence, which has a minimum lot size of 18,000 square feet with 100 feet of frontage, 120 feet of lot width, and 100 feet for lot depth. Rising Homes Elite is proposing to subdivide the subject property into 2 residential lots. The existing home will be situated on a 0.61 acre parcel with 332.6 linear feet of road frontage. The existing access to the residents on the property will be maintained off of Kipling Street. The new lot, which will consist of .614 acres of land, will have 299.6 linear feet of frontage and will take access off of Scott Avenue. The new lot will be serviced by municipal sewer, Pennachuck water, and natural gas off of Scotts Avenue. To mitigate the runoff from the proposed development, we have designed an infiltration basin on the subject lot, the new lot, excuse me, and that has gone through engineering review with the city, and I do believe we have their sign off. Both of the lots meet the dimensional requirements as outlined in the land use code, and we are requesting 2 waivers with this application. The first waiver is from section 190, 282B9, which requires that physical features on site and within 1,000 feet of the subdivision be depicted on the plan. And the second waiver is from the requirement to construct a sidewalk per section 190, 212, D, Part 2. So with this, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that the board may have, or I could go on with the waiver requests that we have before you this evening.
Any additional questions at this point? Just-
I'd just like him to finish up. I
Yep,
have a question.
go ahead,
but-
keep going with the waiver. Yep.
Sure. As part of the application, we are requesting a waiver from Article 43, Section 190, 282B, number 9, pertaining to the physical features on and within 1,000 feet of the subdivision boundaries. This proposed subdivision plan is minor in nature. The physical features have been shown on the subject property and within 200 feet of the boundaries of the subject property. The proposed subdivision consists of creating one new lot by dividing tax map parcel B-230. Strict enforcement of this regulation would not provide any useful data for this proposal, but would create a financial hardship for our client. We therefore respectfully request that the board grant a waiver from Article 43, Section 190, 282, B9, requiring relieving the requirement to depict all physical features within 1,000 feet of the subject site.
Okay.
And then the second waiver request is from Section 190-212D of the National Land Use Code, which allows for a financial contribution to be made to the city of Nashua in lieu of the construction of a sidewalk along an existing street. This section states that a contribution to the City of Nashua Sidewalk Fund may be accepted in lieu of constructing sidewalks when A, none of the lots may be divided into additional building lots under the minimum requirements of the zone, and B, the existing street adjacent to the proposed lots has no sidewalks for a distance of 250 feet on the same side of the streets as new lots. And in this particular case, both of those requirements are met. The property at 20 Kipling Street is located in the B suburban residence district and is occupied again by an existing single-family home and contains 53,321 square feet and 632.21 linear feet of frontage along the roadway. The subdivision plan proposes to subdivide the property into 2 lots. One lot, again, will contain 26,580 square feet and 332.56 linear feet of frontage, and the new lot will contain 26,741 square feet and have 299.64 feet of road frontage. Since the minimum lot area requirement in the R18 district is 18,000 square feet, neither of the resulting lots could be further subdivided, therefore that requirement is met. Consequently, the 2 of the requirements outlined in this section are satisfied. The second criteria for granting the waiver is set forth in subparagraph B, section 192.12D2 of the Land Use Code, and this provision requires that the existing street adjacent to the proposed lots have no sidewalks for a distance of 250 feet on the same side of the street, and there are no sidewalks on any of the streets adjacent to this property. So the criteria for granting the waiver in that condition is met as well. Under Section 190-212E1, the Planning Board may accept a contribution in lieu of construction of sidewalks where A, the application proposes a residential subdivision, and B, the board determines that the proposed use or other pedestrian facilities would eliminate the need for these improvements. In these cases, we also believe that those conditions are met and satisfied. Given the nature of this case and the fact that placing a sidewalk along the frontage of this property would have no purpose, as there would be no connectivity to any existing sidewalks within several hundred feet of the project, since there's no sidewalks close to the property, it makes more sense for the city to accept a contribution in lieu of construction of the sidewalk and direct those funds to a higher priority sidewalk location. We believe that imposing the requirement to build a sidewalk in this case would constitute a hardship, since it would impose a financial burden on the owner in an area where sidewalks are not warranted, given the nature of the site and the lack of sidewalks adjacent to the properties. Not only would a sidewalk in this location serve no purpose, given the lack of adjacent sidewalks, but it would also impose an aesthetic burden to the properties, which is not present on properties to the north or south of the site, and it would cause drainage issues along the existing streets. Since this proposal meets the criteria set forth in this section, we believe it meets the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Okay.
And then based on all of those criteria, we are proposing to contribute for the 299.64 linear feet of frontage along the new lot that's being created, minus the 18 feet for the driveway, which would make the total length 281.64 feet. So at a rate of $50 per linear foot, the total proposed contribution would be $14,082. This contribution only includes the new lot, as both of the lots are corner lots with a total frontage of 632.21 linear feet. We believe this is a very unique situation. Any property, or any calculation, using the total frontage for this property would be an injustice to the property owner, as it would compromise the marketability of their property. If the total frontage is used to compute the sidewalk contribution fee, the contribution would be $29,810.50. This would be excessive and unfair, especially when you consider that lots in this district are only required to have 100 feet of frontage. Lots with 100 feet of frontage would only pay a $4,100 contribution fee. With this in mind, we believe that an offer of $14,082 is fair and reasonable, especially when you consider it's over 3 times what a conforming lot could contribute in this particular zone or in this district. So in summary, we believe this request is very reasonable, meets the spirit and intent of the ordinance, and would not create a hardship for the applicant or the landowner. Applying the $50 linear foot sidewalk fee to the entire frontage would certainly create an unnecessary financial hardship to the owner and would absolutely be an injustice and unfair application of the regulations. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, we do not oppose any of the stipulations that staff has placed in the staff memo, with the exception of the recommendation on the fee for the sidewalk.
Okay, thanks. Questions of the applicant? Mr. Weber?
Excuse me. The infiltration area, will that be an engineered, certified engineer stamp required?
Yeah, we've prepared engineered plans. We submitted a engineered stormwater management report, and all of that material has been reviewed and approved by the engineering office.
Once it's constructed, who will be inspecting it?
That's a good question. I mean, we're not required necessarily to inspect it, but what I can tell you is that the soils on the subject site are very good soils, and it's very conducive to infiltration. And the topography of the site drains internally to the common boundary between the two lots. That's where we're proposing the infiltration area. And from that point, there is a culvert in that location as well that.
Right. The reason I'm asking that is there's a construction affidavit that we've been talking about amongst ourselves and how to resolve the engineered situation that comes before us on these type of applications. And so I'd like to stipulate on this that a third party or your engineer during construction, when it's completed, submit a construction affidavit that it's properly made or constructed, and that's submitted back to the engineering, a copy to the engineering, a copy to the planning board, and a copy to the building department. Does that sound feasible?
I don't see an issue with that.
Okay, thank you. And the reason I'm asking for that is because the homeowner around you, or the homeowners, protection. It's for their protection that it's completed and done right. Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Mr. Varley?
We have in our materials a letter dated July 30th from the city engineering department. In particular, I was wondering about the first bullet that describes several questions, concerns with respect to the drainage. I'm just wondering if you can speak to whether those have been addressed.
Sure, I think I'm just trying to find the letter. Which letter are you referring to? We've received it.
Dated July 30th. It's from Pete Kohami.
Okay, I have it here. Yes, we have looked at these items. This letter is actually referenced in the staff stipulations as well, to make sure we get final sign-off from the engineering department. But we have addressed these items. We just haven't submitted final plans for sign-off at this time. But certainly, we did a soil evaluation in the area of the infiltration basin. I believe there was a question pertaining to the proximity of the retaining wall. We've taken a look at that. And then there was some talk about the existing culvert. It's my understanding that the city actually has since done some work and cleaned that area up. So those items have been addressed.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? No, at this time? Okay, I will ask at this time, is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan? Please go ahead and come forward, state your name and address for the record, and then go ahead and ask your questions. Yep.
Thank you. Bob Allen, 9 Scott Avenue.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for letting me voice my concerns, because a lot of places on this planet that don't allow this, so thank you. Before I get into my concerns, I'd like to take 2 seconds to explain how the layout of that new lot, proposed lot, is with my house. My house is up against the way they built the houses in that neighborhood. They're all on the property line so that you can see green across and green across. So that's part of the deal. Unfortunately, mine's like 25 feet away from the lot line, that where this new building is gonna go, proposed house. And if I look at it correctly, I'm gonna be 25 feet this way, that's gonna be 25 feet that way. And He's gonna have a 2,600 square foot home. I'm gonna have a 1,300 and something square foot home. I'm gonna look like the servants' quarters. So there's a lot of, let me get going on. My house and the lot next door to me are on ledge. It's a mountain, okay? It has a very steep grade. It's substantially lower than mine. It'll require extensive filling, and I'm sure it's solid ledge in there. And if it requires blasting, which it may, it's gonna do away with their water flow program, because once you blast, it's a whole new game. I don't know the fill, how much they're gonna fill, but I've seen it done before. The builder does a great job, the engineer does a great job, they leave it at the right level, then the water runs down, the new homeowner says, hey, I got water in my cellar, first thing he does is fill the front. That's what I'd do if I had water coming in my cellar, I'd fill it. And one of my neighbors across the street has a brook that goes underground and goes right into that lot. And to the best of my knowledge, that lot has a storm drain and a culvert pipe going over to a ditch on Shelley Drive. I believe it's still there. The next thing is, I'm worried about the elevation fill. Next thing is the lot dimensions on the submitted drawings. Those are a reasonable representation of what's gonna be, but those aren't actually lot lines. Those are a good computer-generated idea of what is gonna be built. But one of my lot, which is directly next door to his lot, it's got the telephone pole as a boundary. That telephone pole is on city property, and it's put in with a permit. Now, it's not a boundary marker, okay? Because when telephone poles get hit by a car, they move them. If the street moves over, they'll move the pole. That's not a boundary line, okay? If I interpret the deed correctly, the frontage on Scott Avenue next to my house is 93 feet 5 inches. Does this also act as a variance committee for that, for a variance on the 100-foot requirement?
No.
Okay, well, it's 93.5, and when I bought that house 2 years ago, I bought it for location, period. It's a little small ranch, nothing special, but it's got a great lot. I went to my neighbor behind the house, and I said to him, I need answers to 2 questions. I saw the sump pump in the cellar of mine, and I said, is this a water area? He said, yes. Okay. Second thing I asked, after I went down to the registry of deeds and looked at that house and saw that it was one lot, I said, is Carl Kleiman gonna sell that lot? He said, never. He'd never sell it. So those are the 2 questions I asked before I bought that house 2 years ago. I observed that area is on solid ledge, and the rain runs off like this. There's a top velocity that is solid trees, and they stop the velocity of that lot runoff on top. On the bottom, by the time it saturates, it goes to the bedrock and runs off at a lower velocity. If you had a 2,500 square foot home on that lot with that roof and that asphalt, that top velocity totally changes, and so does the bottom one. That bottom one will be diverted, the top one will just flow. Second question I had is, negative impact on my house. I can't help but believe it's gonna have to negatively impact it. I'm looking at trees now, all green, and I'm gonna be looking at a house twice the size of mine, 50 feet away. It doesn't fit with the neighborhood, with my neighborhood, but Anyway, I'm gonna lose loss of enjoyment, quiet enjoyment, and, my deed search indicates the house behind me. Now, this may or may not be relevant to the planning board, but it's relevant to the neighborhood. My deed search indicates that that home is a Lancashire Heights house, Lancashire Heights home. It has protective covenants with it, restrictive covenants. And the lot is also included in that because it is a lot, and it was originally a Lancashire Heights lot anyway. And in the development agreement, the Lancashire Heights covenants, in Article 2, number 5, it says, these lots cannot be, the only change to a house lot may only result in increasing the size of the lot, not decreasing. It goes against the covenants. Now, that's also on lot dimension. I still think it's undersized for the frontage, but, so I'm looking at filling and blasting with tree removal, driveway paving, running off velocities, absorption rates changing, low-lying wet areas that are there right now, and there are wet areas, standing water, okay? It will have a direct negative impact on my house, and I just think the whole thing is, it's detrimental to that, to the Lancashire Heights neighborhood. I don't think they had any intent of allowing homes to be sold and broken up lot-wise every time once somebody wants to sell a house and make a profit. Thank
Okay.
you for your time. I appreciate that.
All right, thanks. Okay, anybody else wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan? Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the plan? All right, hearing none. The applicant, can you come on up and address a few things? So, specifically, can you talk a little bit about the house with regard to setbacks, things like that? Certainly address ledge, blasting, drainage, and boundaries.
Yeah, we did I can address, I kind of took some notes on
Yeah.
some of these items, so
Okay, go
certainly
ahead.
let me
and
know if I
I'll
missed
remind you
anything.
if you didn't hit some of them.
So we did a boundary survey of the subject property. The utility poles are not the boundary corners. One of them happens to lie, maybe a foot or two off of the existing boundary of the property, so I could understand somebody looking at the plan, they may look at it and think that that is a boundary corner, but it's not. So we did research of the property, did a complete boundary survey of the property. We're obviously certifying to that on the plans, and we are proposing a subdivision. What's important about the subdivision that we're proposing is that these two lots existed in their exact configuration back in 1957, I believe, when the covenants were adopted for the property. So we're simply recreating a subdivision that existed back then. In 1992, these two lots were merged together by the landowner, and that's why it sits as one property right now. But there's always been two lots in this location up to that point in time. In regards to setbacks, we comply with all of the requirements and setbacks in the ordinance, and we are depicting a house that could be developed on the subject property that conforms to all of the setbacks. We have done some research into the soils on site. We have not encountered ledge on the property. There's about 14 or 16 feet of elevation from Scotts Avenue to the low point of the property, which is pretty close to the common boundary along Shelley Drive. There is an existing culvert in that location. We have had our certified soil scientist on site, who is also a wetland scientist. There are no jurisdictional wetlands or anything of that nature on the subject property. Otherwise, you would see those on the plan. So there's no standing water that is of any jurisdictional significance. I personally didn't witness any standing water on the subject site when I was out there. So in regards to drainage, we have designed a drainage system to mitigate all of the improvements that we're proposing. The site does drain internally, so all of the drainage will ultimately be routed to that proposed infiltration basin that we have agreed to inspect and sign an affidavit on that it will be built per the design plan. So I think that would hopefully addresses any drainage related concerns for the project, because we have certainly gone through you know, the details and submitted those through the engineering department accordingly. I think that touches on the majority of the comments, unless I've missed something, Mr. Chairman.
Can you just explain the covenants issue a little more? I mean, are these two, is this current single lot actually part of that? Does it have covenants on it?
It does.
And
And we meet all of those covenants. Our land surveyor has reviewed that, and the project attorney has reviewed that as well. There is a minimum lot size. All the lots have to be a minimum of 20,000 square feet. So we satisfy all of the covenants that exist. And again, this lot existed back when those covenants were, you know, applied.
What about Mr. Allen's suggestion that there's a covenant that says you can increase the lot size but not decrease it? Is there a covenant to that effect? And
I'm not aware of a covenant that would apply in this scenario, because this lot existed when those covenants were there. So this lot in the exact geometry that we're proposing existed. So you can recreate what existed, you know, in those covenants. And again, that Mr. Westgate, Attorney Brad Westgate, reviewed the covenants, and we made sure that the plan that we have before you this evening does comply with all those requirements.
can you talk about how you go about researching those boundaries and what due diligence you do?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a licensed land surveyor, but I can speak to it from an, you know, standpoint of experience. So we research our properties and we research the adjacent properties in order to determine, you know, we get all the record plans, all the deed history in order to make certain that certain decisions are made so that everybody gets their due frontage, due land and acreage and so on. There was a reference plan for this particular development, so we were able to tie into the reference plan. And, you know, we've typically have at least 2 of our land surveyors, you know, perform research, you know, check over the research and so on subdivisions of this nature. So we're confident that what we're depicting on the plan is accurate and is correct.
Okay.
That's just a, you know, general overview, but you don't just research your property, you take a look at the surrounding properties as well.
Mr. Peterson?
So does your test indicate that there is not ledge underneath that property?
We didn't encounter ledge in the observation that we did.
And it's soil that drains well, in your opinion?
That's what all indications are, yeah. I mean, the soils can change, you know, from one property to the next. There is, like I said, 14 to 16 feet of elevation change across the, you know, the property. So we, you know, we don't have, I haven't seen any standing water. There is a culvert down by Shelley Drive that goes under Shelley Drive and does outlet into a, you know, a swale on the other side of the road. But we didn't encounter any ledge on the property.
Thank you.
Alderman Tenza?
Can I just ask a follow-up on that? You said the testing that you did, what testing did you do? And, I mean, were you specifically looking for ledge? Because, I mean, that area is pretty consistent throughout. I think that it's a tough area to dig into.
So the testing that we did was solely related to the drainage design and the infiltration basin. So we didn't dig a test pit in the house location, and I'm not standing before you saying that we are not going to encounter, you know, ledge on the site. We just, in our testing, we haven't uncovered anything. The soils that we found were sandy in the location of the infiltration area, so it's a good design for that location. We're not gonna have as much excavation because we have a condition where we have a walkout basement because of the grades, that go across the site. So it's not, we're not digging a full foundation into the soils either. We're proposing to do that anyways.
Other questions? Okay. Can you, so if you do find ledge, what happens?
Well, there's a process if, for ledge removal, there's a permit that someone would have to get on the city level, and go through the appropriate channels to either hammer the ledge or to blast the ledge. But, again, we haven't encountered that on site.
Right. Okay. Alderman Tenda?
Thank you. Do you have a sense of the history of the lot? How the lot was developed? I mean, was it backfill that was put in the back half of the lot that you want to develop on now, or has that always been that way as kind of a wood lot? That's probably not the best way to ask the question, but hopefully you understand what I'm getting at.
I mean, the topography doesn't necessarily lend itself to a lot that's been filled, just because it kind of starts on, the frontage and slopes all the way to the other side of the property. There's no shelving or, steep slopes that would a lot of times happen if it's a fill site where you'd have, kind of the backside of a fill area oftentimes will be, slightly steeper. So I haven't encountered anything that would lead me to believe that it's, a property that's been filled in the past. I think it's just a lot that somebody purchased and decided not to build on. And, in 1992, they decided to merge the two lots together. And obviously, now they are looking at selling it, so.
Other questions for the applicant? Mr. Peterson?
Could you venture a guess as to why nothing was built there in the first place?
I'm guessing it's because of the person that purchased that home wanted to have that privacy out in the back, and they purchased two lots. There's nothing on the site. There's no, like I said, there's no jurisdictional wetlands. There's no features that would lend itself to, not being developed. It's not a small lot. It's sizable. You can fit a reasonable home on there. So the only thing I could say is that I'm guessing that someone just decided to buy two lots. That's not uncommon when people are buying into a development. They get to create kind of their own atmosphere.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant in this period? None right now? Okay. I have a question for staff. I'll ask it right now before we get too much further. With regard to the covenants, do you folks review that? or
No,
look at
they're
that?
not private covenants, we do not.
You don't look
No.
at that, right? So, okay.
Yeah, generally speaking, it's the property owners who can enforce that. The city can't enforce private covenants
Okay.
unless we're a party to those covenants. And in this case, it's my belief we are not.
Okay, thanks. All right, at this time, I ask, for those who are concerned, if you still have an additional question regarding what was said in the rebuttal, you're welcome to come forward and make sure you state your name and address just one more time for me. Yep.
Thank you. Bob Allen, 9 Scott Avenue. I didn't hear an answer for the frontage requirement, 93 feet and a half.
Okay.
It's supposed to be 100 feet of frontage. There's not. I didn't hear
Sorry,
that.
when you refer to the frontage, which lot? are
Scott
you-
Ave. It's supposed to be
The lot being newly created?
Yes. lot being subdivided on Scott Avenue, where the front of the house is proposed, and my deed says 93 and a half feet.
Okay, thanks. Was that the
Okay.
only?
Second thing,
Yep.
that original lot that you're talking about was my house that lot in Claremont was all one piece of land. Carl bought them all. His mother-in-law was the first one that lived in my house, and that lot was originally that house, then it went over to Carl, and that lot has always, and clear chain, Lancashire Height lot. It was always under the covenants. And then, now that it's part of the 20 Kipling, it is one lot, it's still under Lancashire Height covenants. And I have a copy of the covenant right here that says you can't decrease the lot.
Okay. I mean, is that an extra copy, or? Okay, yeah, maybe,
Or no, yeah, if you could pass it around to us.
yeah, we'll just take a look and then we can pass it around during the meeting.
You can decrease it for street sizes.
Just go right up there, yeah, sorry, you can't hear you without it.
Yeah, you're right. You can, at the beginning of the Lancashire Height development, they decided if they had to move a street or get a right-of-way, whatever, that's the only way those lots could be diminished. You couldn't just, like, every person that sells a house up there can do this, just break off part of their lot and build a house. That's what they did not want. That's why it's in the covenants.
Okay,
Thank you.
can we pass that around?
Someone else wanted to.
We're in the second
Oh, sorry,
rebuttal
sorry,
period,
sorry.
so at this point, if you have something, you would need to talk through
No,
the other person.
my name's Jonathan Weber. I own the property across the street from the lot in question, and I just want to clarify a couple of things. I'm not going to raise any new points.
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
On the frontage, it seems to me they have made the frontage requirement by noting that it's a corner lot. And it seems to me you can either make the frontage on a corner lot and pay for the sidewalk along the whole length of it, or you can make the frontage on just, if you're going to take the whole street frontage as the frontage, you should pay for the entire sidewalk on the frontage.
Okay. Thanks.
He was asking for a waiver on providing.
Yeah,
the
we're,
entire-
we're aware of that, yep.
So he wants it one way for the sidewalk and another way for the frontage.
Okay.
Uh,
Thanks.
And the other point, just as, the property was maintained as, at least in my experience, it was Clarmon's effort to keep it forever wild. In a particular case in question, after we had the ice storm, we had to saw some branches, and it was convenient to stack them on the other side of the street, and within hours of our putting the branches there, Clarmon very forcefully informed us that his property was not a dumping ground and that he didn't want our stuff on there. And we told him as soon as we got it cut up, we would, dispose of it properly. So he looked out for that as a natural refuge. It was not a dumping ground. It was his view that it was basically his park. And he enforced that with all of the neighbors.
All right, thanks. Okay. All right, at this time, I'd ask the applicant, there's sort of one question out there, just this frontage question. Can you address that, please, for us?
Sure. So the property has frontage on Scotts Ave, Shelley Drive, and Kipling Drive, or Kipling Street, excuse me. So we have 620 or 32 linear feet of frontage total. It's 2 corner lots. We absolutely satisfy the frontage requirement. And just to clarify, the waiver that we're asking for is we're making a proposal that we would pay the $50 per linear foot fee for one of the entire corner lots. So it's the frontage along Scotts Avenue and Shelley Drive for the new lot that we
Understood.
are offering to pay. And the reality is that, and I had an opportunity to review the memo from the meeting that the board had relative to calculating the sidewalk fees, and I understand that the memos, regulations are meant to be, it's a broad brush approach where it's to be applied, but I think there's always circumstances that are very unique. And when you have two corner lots with over 630 feet of frontage, that's a very, very unique situation that I believe has to be considered. And that's why we're requesting a waiver for the fee to be on the new lot, which is still a lot of frontage. The application that you heard before us was a one new lot in town, or in the city, and it's an $8,000 fee. We're proposing $14,082. I think it's a reasonable proposal. So just wanted to clarify that we're not looking just to pay for a fee along Scott Avenue. In regards to the covenant, the first plan that we submitted to the city actually had that new lot being larger, and we were making the existing lot, smaller. And when we reviewed the covenant with the attorney said the lots have to be exactly as they were when the covenant was enacted. That way, we're not making anything smaller. That's why the plan that we have before you tonight is exactly the way the lots were configured when the covenant was generated back in 1957. So we are not making any of the lots smaller when it comes to how the covenant saw those lots at that time. And that was reviewed in detail, not by me, but reviewed in detail by the attorney and certainly our surveyors. So I don't want there to be any question relative to whether that document was reviewed and how it was applied to this development.
Okay. Thanks. The attorney's not here tonight, right?
I'm afraid not.
Okay. Alderman Tenza, yeah, we're still open. You can ask stuff of the applicant. if
Thank you.
Yeah.
So can I ask, is there a reason you chose an address on Scott Drive as opposed to Shelley Drive, where there would seem to be enough frontage to meet the 100-foot requirement and potentially more of a buffer for 9 Scott Drive?
When you look at the topography of the lot, there is better access coming off of Scott's Avenue, and there is also, I think that driveway on that road is a safer way to access the new lot. When you come in, if you came in on Shelley Drive, you'd be coming in at the low point of the lot. So when you think about it from a development standpoint, we're developing on the high point of the lot. We're able to capture all the improvements in the lower area, mitigate all the improvements, infiltrate, that runoff, and then there's a drainage culvert that goes under Shelley Drive in that lower section. So I think the layout, certainly takes into consideration the topography, but also, where it's most appropriate to access the adjacent roadway from a safety standpoint.
Yeah. Other questions of the applicant? No? Okay. We're already through the second thing at this point, so appreciate it. Any other questions for staff before I close the hearing? Mr. Weber?
One thing for staff.
Yeah.
This board doesn't have any jurisdiction on covenants.
Correct.
Okay, so we really can't even take that into consideration, the covenant.
If a butter can hire his own attorney if he feels the covenants aren't being enforced and
Right.
and file accordingly with.
That's what my understanding was, so, thank you.
But I would like to just add one thing.
Sure.
If the board does decide to approve this, stipulation number 4 can be deleted. And also, in regards to sidewalks, I know we've had a lot of discussion about that lately. This is a unique property. They happen to have frontage on Shelley, Scott, and Kipling. So what the applicant is offering is reasonable, considering that it is almost $30,000 if they were to have to do the contribution along all 3 frontages. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay. Other questions for staff before I close the hearing? Okay, at this time, I'm gonna close the hearing and move into the public meeting. All right, so we have in front of us the two-lot subdivision. There's obviously been a few discussion points here. The covenants, it seems like we talked through that considerably. I'm not sure personally whether we have anything to do with that. Obviously, we've already been informed the city is not looking at that. It's a landowner to landowner kind of issue. You know, it's good to talk about it, I think, to make sure, you know, because it could run into issues or whatever.
Yeah, and I think,
yeah.
we heard
Yeah.
from the applicant that
Yeah.
they have legal counsel review it and confirm that they were in conformance with the covenants, and based on what we have in front of us, that it looks to me to be correct,
Okay.
so.
We've talked about ledge and blasting, that's come up a few times. We know there are procedures in place for the city that abutters are notified. There's a definite procedure there for blasting that we've had in earlier discussions. There was some discussion on drainage. And then obviously the waivers, so, anyone wanna comment?
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
Just on what I was talking about, a stipulation.
Mr. Weber?
The construction, whoever is making it, that a construction affidavit will be submitted to the building department, planning department, and the engineering department prior to CFO.
COO, yeah. Specific to civil and drainage work?
Yes,
Okay, all right,
specific to the
Yeah.
infill.
yeah. What about the sidewalk? Any discussions? Anybody?
We've had
Mr. Weber? Just, we're live,
Thank you,
so I gotta-
thank you. We've had many times come before us that we considered all of this, and I think we should consider this, the reasonable and the request of the applicant. It's not unreasonable for us to change and not enforce the full thing at this time. We've done one over by the airport. I know we had two different frontages, and we just took one. We didn't take the entire frontage. And this sounds very reasonable request.
Mr. Robbins?
Would, we're talking about frontage, and we're using, as I understand it, we're using that term to include all of the boundary connection with the streets, basically,
Correct.
all the way around. If we were to use the frontages of the two lots that only were adjacent to Kipling and to Scott, those are the two streets on which the properties front. And in this unusual case, Shelley Drive is at the side, in effect.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if it would be consistent with everything we've done if we use the two frontage dimensions, the one on Kipling and the one on Scott, as opposed to, and would that be more consistent with the intent of what we have done and what we hope to do?
Well, I think it would be consistent if we were to require sidewalks to be built. That would be where we would recommend they be built. My 2 cents, but I don't know what others think.
Yeah.
Mr. Varley?
I mean, I think we just need to decide whether this subdivision is sufficiently different than, for example, the one we just considered before this, in terms of the frontage. And it seems to me that the distinguishing factor here is that there would be two corner lots, which is a bit unique. I know the applicant mentioned, that the minimum frontage is 100 feet, and so, that they're contributing significantly more than what the minimum would be. I don't think that's particularly relevant, because, the fact that these lots happen to be bigger than the minimum size. But if we were going to make a distinction, I would say it would be based on the fact that we have two corner lots. I'm just thinking about, you know, how we would then evaluate this going forward. So it seems to me we should establish what the basis is if we're going to request less than the full frontage.
Ms. Arbor?
At the meeting, when we discussed sidewalks, we did discuss unique situations such as this, so my personal feeling is that this does fit that bill.
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson?
The new house in question takes place on the new lot, and I think to consider the old lot when calculating the sidewalks is irrelevant. We should just take into account the frontage on the new lot.
Okay. Anybody else, questions on that? No? Other comments, other? No? Well, anybody wanting to make a motion? And I guess I'd recommend, if we're talking about motions, we want to address a few things. There's two waivers. There's one regarding the delineation of physical features on the plan. We didn't really talk a lot about that, but that's been a reasonably consistent waiver unless there's a reason why those features, you know, need to be shown for, you know, our decision-making. We've got the sidewalk and both the contribution and the waiver itself. And then Ed talked about a construction control affidavit with regard to the civil drainage improvements by the engineer.
And just a reminder, Ed, you were proposing when that construction affidavit would be issued prior to?
CFO, Certificate of Occupancy.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that's what you. And can anyone refresh my memory as to what the sidewalk contribution that the applicant was proposing? Because it's not what's in the report, because I don't think that the lesser amount didn't maybe include the driveway. So I know it was 14,000 something. Can anyone?
18,082.
14,082.
Would that be also minus 18?
That, I think
That
that
is
that
including
includes
that.
the minus 18.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I just make one more comment?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Tenza.
Thank you, and I'll just say that regarding the process that we use here, and this is no one's fault, but a lot of times we get these cases that are complicated, and, you know, issues are raised. I kind of feel like a little bit like Mr. Rapucci here today, and I'm gonna say, you know, I'm not sure I have enough information, on this case, specifically as it relates to, maybe what would happen when they start to develop this land and some of the concerns that were raised by the abutters. I think if we had a little bit more information on it, if they were willing to do some more testing specifically around this idea of the ledge in the area, that would make me feel a lot better that can be developed, and it can be developed in a way that's respectful of the neighbors. So I know there's a lot of times, you know, we vote on things right when they come up before them, but sometimes I think it's good to hold off and get a little bit more information before we make a decision. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. Anybody else have a
Just-
concern about that? Mr. Weber?
Just to address, Alderman, I used to be in construction, and you can have a test here, 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 and all of a sudden, or right over here, there's ledge, and it just comes up, and especially in New England, and it's expensive, and so to do the testing, then you're not thoroughly. There is safeguards for the neighborhood, for the neighbors. This has come before us many times, and there are safeguards, insurances for them if anything happens to their property. It's not a great idea, but it happens, in construction that this is the only way you can do it. And they try to jackhammer it first, of course, you know, but I'm just saying, just if we had them go out and test 4 places, it wouldn't guarantee it's gonna happen.
I mean, we have in the past required a pre-survey of particular houses. Sometimes it's been the abutters that have come and showed concern prior to any blasting be done. And they, go in and video the abutters, foundations, conditions. I mean, that is a stipulation we have put in place in the past.
And I'll say, part of the new blasting ordinance that was passed,
Yeah.
that has to be done, and there's a process that anyone would have to go through if blasting were to occur.
Okay.
And I would hope it wouldn't have to come to that, but,
So you're saying that type of pre-survey would have to be done under the blasting ordinance?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody want to make a motion? We're kind of at the point of either making a motion like for, against, or if Alderman Tenza wants, you could request a tabling to more conditions or more information is made, but you'd have to be pretty specific about that in the motion. So. Okay, anybody?
Well, I guess at this point, I mean, I'm not even sure. I would make a motion just to table this in order for more information regarding the I don't know, was it topography of the lot to be established so that the abutters can feel somewhat confident or comfortable that it's not going to impinge on any of their land or rights or.
I guess I'm not super clear on what yeah. So are you making a motion that we recommend tabling this to get more information on, like, specifically with regard to ledge? Or is there something other
Yes.
beyond that you want
No, it would just be the ledge, that would be my concern.
testing? Anybody else have that concern? I mean, at this point, we need a second, I guess, to start the process. Is there a second on that? No second there? Okay.
All right.
All right. Any additional motions? Anyone?
I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Mr. Barley? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Barley.
I'll make a motion to approve new business number 3, subdivision plan, estate of Carl J. Klarman, applicant, Racing Home Elite LLC, proposed 2-lot subdivision. Finding that the plan does meet the requirements outlined in subdivision NRO section 190-138G with a total of 9 stipulations. The first stipulation being waiver request, reading is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. The second, also being waiver request, reading is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. And that stipulation will include a sidewalk contribution amount of $14,082. And I would just note that the board, the consensus of the board was that the uniqueness of the subdivision, the lots in question justified a sidewalk contribution on lesser linear foot than we would ordinarily require. Stipulation number 3 is written in the staff report. Stipulation number 4 to be deleted. Stipulations 5 through 9 renumbered accordingly and as written in the staff report. And then a new stipulation number 9 indicating that the applicant will obtain or provide a construction affidavit certifying that the drainage improvements have been constructed in accordance with the engineering plans and that be provided prior to the certificate of occupancy.
Okay, so we have that motion to approve with the stipulations as indicated by Mr. Varley. Do we have a second on that? Second by Mr. Weber. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So the motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and to 1. All right, thanks. Okay, we're gonna move on to new business subdivision plan, case number 4. Company Hurd Clegg LLC owner, application and acceptance of proposed 4-lot subdivision. Property is located at 25 Ingle Street, located in Ward 7. Do I have a motion, or some people looked at this enough to determine whether or not we're ready to take jurisdiction?
So moved.
We have a motion to take jurisdiction by Mr. Robbins. Any second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Tenza. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. All right, it's your floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thanks for hearing this application this evening. My name's Colin Jean. I'm an attorney here in Nashua with an office at 64 McKean Street. With me this evening are the applicants and owners of the property, Tumpney, Hurd, and Clegg, represented this evening by Mr. George Hurd and Mr. Robert Clegg, and also the civil engineer, Michael Granger, with MJ Granger Engineering. So if there's any questions outside the field of my, scope of my knowledge, these folks will be here to answer willingly.
All right, thanks.
This evening, come before you looking and asking for a 4-parcel subdivision from what is now Lot 6, Tax Map 6, 25 Ingle Street, with land on St. Lazare Street. This parcel comprises approximately 1.8 acres, or 79,681 square feet. The subdivision is located in a residential B and residential C zone. The 3 proposed single-family dwellings, which are all on St. Lazare, to be numbered 27, 29, and 31 St. Lazare, meet all of the code and zoning requirements for the residential B zone. The first lot comprises over 30,000 square feet, the second lot over 17,000 square feet, or just under 18,000 actually, and the third lot 12,500 square feet. Residential B requires 6,000 square feet. So obviously, the size of the lots is greatly exceeding the requirements. All setbacks and side setbacks, front yard setbacks, backyard setbacks are met in accordance with the plan. Peculiar nature of the property is that the 4th remaining lot is in residential C zone, and that comprises I think about 18,000 square feet. Basically, there are no plans to develop that at this point in time. The owners are still taking into consideration what the best use for it might be down the road. But this evening plan strictly subdivides the property into 4 lots, 3 of which are looking to put single-family residences on the existing lots as depicted on the plan. The request also asks for 3 waivers. One is for the sidewalk waiver, because basically that particular neighborhood from St. Lazare to St. Camille has absolutely no sidewalks anywhere on it. And also, to have a sidewalk would be uncharacteristic of the neighborhood. Together with that, the applicant and owner have agreed to the recommended contribution as proposed and outlined by staff, which would be the 266 feet of frontage times 50 feet minus 18 feet for 4 driveways, which is 72 feet, which comes to a grand total of $9,731.50, which the applicant has agreed to contribute. The second waiver is regarding overhead utilities. Again, the entire neighborhood is serviced by overhead utilities. To have underground utilities, again, would be uncharacteristic of the neighborhood and a burden that really isn't consistent with the general nature of that neighborhood. The third waiver is the existing conditions, which has been I think, fairly well thought out and discussed in prior applications here this evening. The plan does show 200 feet existing conditions. The 1,000-foot existing conditions in this very settled neighborhood, I don't think would serve any clear purpose other than to impose a burden on the applicant. With respect to conditions, recommendations and findings of staff, the applicant is in accord with all, with the exception of number 6, which city engineering has indicated they'd be willing to strike, given the fact that the 35-foot buffer that surrounds the property would in fact not present any kind of a concern for the city as to its easement surrounding the city. This particular parcel of land is surrounded just about all the way around by the Joyce Conservation and Wildlife Sanctuary, and I think the city wanted to preserve that their two parcels of land would never be separated through erosion. The fact that we have a buffer that leads all the way down to the city property would ensure that there would be no erosion that would cause the city to lose its easement area. The other thing that the plan clearly depicts, as you can see in the, I believe, red or dark pink area, is that the first thing the developer's going to do is put a silt fence around that entire area so that anything during construction remains within the confines of the development area. None of the construction debris removal would be able to be deposited outside the scope, thereby confirming the fact that nothing's going to be running down on the hillside towards the brook. I believe in a nutshell, that's what I have for you this evening. Be happy to answer any questions regarding the proposed 4-lot subdivision or the existing empty lot in the RC zone. I'll point out that all of the, one of the concerns we had early on were the driveways, because the, I guess, number 31, St. Lazare, which would be the lot closest to the Ingalls side lot, originally had the driveway within the 50-foot zone. That's been moved so that we have no driveways within 50 feet of a corner, except for the pre-existing non-conforming grandfather driveway that's on the empty lot. Any questions, concerns?
Mr. Varley?
Just a quick clarification. Did you indicate it was stipulation 6 or 7 in the staff report that you were asking?
I believe number 6, where the applicant will work with planning staff to provide a small pedestrian easement behind the property, and the wording says, in the event city-owned parcels become disconnected.
Okay, so that's, in ours, that's stipulation 7. So
Oh,
that's
I
what
apologize.
Because the stipulation 6 has to do with not disturbing the 75-foot prime wetland buffer.
Oh, all right. My agenda is,
You may just have maybe an older version, but I just
probably
wanted,
have a
so I
previous
just wanted to
staff report.
clarify that. So
I-
it's the easement that you're
Correct.
asking to be
Yeah.
struck.
I know there was one other concern shared with me this evening by staff and engineering, that it was their desire that an additional stipulation be added regarding basement or basement plumbing, and that the applicant and owner has agreed that they're all going to be unfinished basements with no utilities in the basement. So in terms of bathrooms, washers, dryers, that stuff is all going to be, and the reason for that concern, which is certainly understandable, is it's combined sewer and drainage system on that, in that particular part of town.
So I assume you're being specific about the plumbing really there, not
Correct.
in terms of utility. Okay. Can you, couple quick things. And this is just with regard to the plan, there's 2 power poles on the side of the street that, where the 3 new lots are gonna be.
Mm-hmm, yes, sir.
I guess I'm just a little concerned how the overhead utility is gonna work from the locations of the 2 poles are such that they're kind of on the opposite ends
Correct.
of
And-
each
and
side.
My understanding is the applicant is working with, I believe, Eversource, and that it's probably going to be a 3rd pole that
Third
needs to
pole,
be
okay.
installed.
Yeah, because you don't usually like to see overhead utilities across lots.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's my understanding at this point in time. The recommendation has been that a third pole will be installed.
okay. And then, can you talk a little bit about the difference between the RC lot and what the potential uses of that lot could be?
Sure, yeah. At this point in time, there are a couple of different things under consideration, none of which are in stone. But it's obviously a possibility that with an RC zone, it's possible to put like a two duplexes on that parcel of land, or a triplex condo type thing, which is done, I think, at the end of Underhill Street. I'm sure you think Frank Queen might have done something at the end of Underhill with a triplex at the very end of the street. So those are the two things that are under consideration right now. There's more than enough land there. It has the proper frontage, and obviously would meet all the necessary setbacks. But obviously, that would require site plan approval from you anyways, no matter what is proposed down the line.
Right, right. So that would require a site plan, that wouldn't just be a subdivision?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Other questions for the applicant from the board? Anything else? No. Looks like none at this time. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition or concern to this plan? Go ahead and come on up and state your name and address and let us know what you have for concerns.
How you doing? My name's Matthew Bovair. I live at 28 St. Lazare Street, and I have concerns about what the traffic would be, because I'd purchased my house at this location about 8 years ago based on having small children and plan on being here for a long time. And by throwing in 3 houses and potentially what this guy is saying about wanting to put in a sub-complex at the end of the road, you're talking about maybe potentially adding like another 10 families living on this one small, quiet road. Seems like an abundance of unnecessary traffic in a neighborhood that is relatively real quiet now, with nice having forest across the street. So it's a nice quiet little area that will, seems like soon to be not to be very quiet anymore. And as for the 2 light poles, neither one of those poles can join one another. They're both end-of-line services, so how is that going to affect all of the previous utilities that we have going on in the neighborhood, as heavy snow has knocked out power in our neighborhood for a week at a time sometimes? And those are my concerns. I'm just concerned about traffic, as I have 2 small kids, and I don't want people racing up and down my street all day long where I live when they're playing out in the yard by putting in all these extra houses. But I guess that's really all I have for now. But
Okay. Let me just address the comments. So that right now, they're just proposing the 3 houses.
Yeah.
The applicant did talk about a potential use for that other lot, but that other lot, if there were other uses, there'd be another hearing for that lot before anything else could change there at that right-hand RC lot. So there wouldn't be development on that lot as a result of this hearing at all. So it'd just be 3 at this time. But you just want to make sure you knew that, so.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I
Great,
have
we'll bring your questions up. Yeah, sure. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan? Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the plan? Was there an opposition? I didn't, no, okay. Applicant? Yeah, so 2 things, traffic and utilities.
Yes. Traffic-wise, it's certainly a valid concern, but these are intended to be family homes with families living in them, and I would think that the people living in those homes would have the same feelings and care and respect for the safety of their own children as they would for those that are already existing on that street. I don't think that, given the fact that we're talking about a 2-acre site almost with 3 single-family residential homes, overburdens the neighborhood, and certainly offers, as the houses are designed, 2-car garages with plenty of off-street parking. So I think it's a natural concern to have anytime you have any kind of a development in your neighborhood. But I think that, given the fact that we're not talking about multi-unit, difficult parking situations with really an added burden on the community with respect to traffic, that it's really going to have an impact on the neighborhood other than any other single-family home would have. And with respect to the overhead utilities, it's my understanding that an application was put in with PSNH, I have a copy of it, with respect to the need that they see in terms of being able to sufficiently provide the services that they offer through overhead. And the recommendation, to my understanding, was that an additional pole at the midway point would service all units without interrupting the neighborhood as it stands. Obviously, power outages occur when there's bad weather. I don't think that's necessarily going to be impacted by these residences.
Okay. All right. Other questions for the applicant? No? You do have one more opportunity if you have sufficient questions, okay? All right. Any questions of the board, from the board of staff prior to me closing the hearing here?
Just the price.
Mr. Weber?
Thank you. 3, what was the price? I didn't have the price down.
For the,
Number 3.
Oh, it's as written in it's the 9,731.50. It's in the report.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, move into the public meeting. So in front of us now, we have a subdivision. There's essentially 4 lots, but as we talked about that 4th lot, any development there at this point would be another, that would actually come in as a site plan, not a subdivision. 3 houses, we've talked about the utilities, talked a little bit about traffic. That's pretty much it, so.
I did have
Other
just, yeah,
comments?
well, clarifying question for staff regarding the stipulations. The applicant was requesting that we remove stipulation number 7. Is that something staff is agreeable to?
That's fine. That'll clear things up. And
And then he suggested that you had then requested that we add a new stipulation, though, regarding no plumbing in the basement?
yes, add no plumbing in the basement fixtures, yeah.
So we could just replace the existing 7 with the new stipulation?
Mr. Peterson?
In our packet, we received the letter from a person claiming to be the descendant of the original owners of that land, and that was refuted by the attorney for the applicant. Should we take her claims into account in our decision tonight?
It's my opinion that, deed-related ownership claim items is not the purview of the planning board. And it's not within our specific criteria of things that we review. I'm happy for anybody else to give their opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we have really no means of determining whether she has, whether she would have a valid claim to title. So, I mean, I agree with Scott. I mean, we don't really have the opportunity or the ability, or like you said, I don't think it's not contemplated within the criteria that we have to affirmatively establish title. I think we assume that the applicant's coming in and has valid title to the property that they're seeking to develop.
Right.
So that person should pursue legal avenues on her own. That's not up to us to make that judgment.
Yeah,
That's my opinion. We don't, we're a land use board. That's all we are, yeah. Yeah.
We're not estate attorneys,
nope.
okay?
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Anybody else? Comments? No? Okay. Anybody willing to make a motion? Number 4. Remind them.
No, I'll let you. You got everything down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unless anybody else wants to.
No.
Okay. This is new business number 4, right? That's the correct number?
Yeah.
I will make a motion to approve new business number 4, subdivision plan, owners, Tumpney Herd Clegg LLC, proposed 4-lot subdivision at 25 Ingle Street, finding that the project does meet the requirements outlined in subdivision NRO section 190-138G, with a total of 12 stipulations. First 2 being waiver request, both to read is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. Stipulation number 3 also being a waiver request, reading is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. and with a contribution amount equal to $9,731.50. Stipulations 4, 5, and 6 to read as written in the staff report. Stipulation 7 to be deleted in its entirety and replaced with a new stipulation reading that the houses to be constructed on the 3 new lots will not include plumbing in any of the basements. And then stipulations 8 through 12, reading as written in the staff report.
Yeah. I would just maybe see if you could clarify that it's under slab plumbing, just to be very clear.
So I will clarify that the new stipulation number 7 I'm adding is with respect to under slab plumbing in the basements.
All right, thanks. So we have a motion with those stipulations as indicated by Mr. Varley. Is anybody want to second that?
I will second that.
Mr. Weber? Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Thanks. Okay, we're moving on to case number,
Can we take a break for a second?
yeah, go ahead. We'll take a
You burned me.
5-minute break.
I'm sure, and Brad Westgate's a good attorney, so I'm sure, he looked at this and everything, but it's based on the existing plan at the time of the covenant. So since they were doing it precisely as the original plan.
Yeah, no, that seems, do you find it faster?
Full house in there, he had to take his time. Fine.
This is Bradford J. Hill Revocable Trust, lot line relocation plan. This is a subdivision plan, 4 through 6 Fox and L Fox Street and 14B Broad Street. And then case number, we're gonna hear this at the same time as case number 6, which is a site plan. Same owner, and an application and acceptance of a proposed amendment to NR 449 to show lot line relocation. This property at 14B Broad Street. Okay, Mr. Maynard?
Thank you.
Well, we gotta
Hang on, we
accept
need-
them.
Yeah, we need a motion to accept. Well, actually, we gotta do 2 of them,
Two,
too,
right,
so
yeah.
we do that first.
Did you accept jurisdiction yet?
We
did
gotta do that first. So I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Okay, so a motion to accept new business number 5, subdivision by Mr. Weber, second by Mr. Varley. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then regarding number 6, case 6, can I get a motion on that one, too?
Make a motion?
We have a motion by Alderman Tenza to take jurisdiction on new business number 6. A second for that?
Second.
Second by Ms. Harper. And any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now you're on.
One correction, Mr. Chairman, you keep calling number 5 a subdivision, it's a lot line relocation.
Okay,
It's 2 lots of record already.
all right. Thank you.
But that's important, as you'll see later on. For the record, my name is Richard Maynard, professional engineer with Maynard Parquet Engineering, representing the property owner and applicant, Bradford J. Hill Revocable Trust. The matter before the board involves a lot line relocation of the 2 existing lots on Fox Street and an amended site plan for a minor change in the boundary for the Goodale Bike Shop property to the rear, which is a commercial site plan. The Fox Street site contains 2 lots of record in the GI General Industrial Zone. One lot has an existing residential duplex and contains 22,825 square feet. The lot to the left is vacant and contains 19,404 square feet. On May 22nd, the ZBA granted a variance to construct a single-family home on the vacant lot in the GI zone. The proposal is to relocate the existing lot lines for these 2 Fox Street lots. Lot line for the duplex would be shifted to the left, creating room for a side yard and the existing driveway serving the duplex, to that side of the duplex. The surplus land to the rear would be merged into the commercial complex to the east, fronting on Broad Street, containing the Goodale Bike Shop, store, and several other businesses at 14B Broad Street. The current zoning requires a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. The final lot line relocations will result in lot line, will provide 17,278 square feet for the duplex and 9,085 square feet for the single-family building lot. Some 15,866 square feet will be added to the Goodale's Bike Shop commercial lot. On the plan I put up on the wall, it's kind of a summary of all the things. The yellow lines represent what's there today, and the dark lines are what you end up reviewing and potentially approving. There are a few waivers to consider. For the lot line relocation, waiver underground utilities is requested. For the Goodale's commercial lot, waivers for new landscaping and for an existing conditions plan are requested. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Maynard, can you just be specific on the site plan component?
On this,
there's no construction taking
not
place.
construction, all we're doing is adding vacant land. The back of these existing lots is being added to that commercial site, nothing's occurring.
Nothing's occurring.
It just becomes more green space for the commercial site.
Okay, and then you want a waiver, obviously, for the existing condition, and then
Well,
you're not adding any landscaping?
We're not adding, not changing anything.
Okay.
You already have that plan on record.
Right,
There's nothing else changing.
just getting land.
The only thing we're changing is the site plan, the boundary of the site, showing the additional land and the difference in the square footage, but everything else is exactly the same as previously approved.
Okay,
On numerous occasions by this board, too, for different reasons, but.
all right, that's clear to me. Any questions for Mr. Maynard? Mr. Weber?
Last time you were here, I requested the dumpsters to be enclosed. You did one. There is one that's enclosed. There's several others that are not enclosed.
On
And
the,
right-
are you talking about on the commercial lot?
site plans, yes.
All right, that wasn't me, but go ahead.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of that
The
request.
applicant, okay, the applicant came before us and I stipulated that any dumpsters to be enclosed. They enclosed one, but they put a dumpster right next to it.
Please re-stipulate it, and I'll make sure it happens.
Please, thank you very much.
Any other questions for the applicant on either item? Okay, any questions? All right, thanks. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan? Either one of them? No? Anybody wishing to speak in favor? No? All right, any other questions for the applicant by the board or of staff from the board during the hearing? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna close the hearing, move into the meeting. So, basically I have two things in front of us that essentially look to me like we're just moving a lot line for all practical purposes, to add some land to the commercial lot. Anybody else have any comments? I mean, Mr. Weber, I know you talked about, I guess that would be on number 6, that you would add the stipulation for
Yes,
the
not
dumpster
subdivision, I'll do it
enclosures.
on the site plan.
Site plan. Anybody else have any other things they want to talk about? Okay, at this point, I'd entertain a motion for new business number 5 to start with. Anybody want to make a motion on that? That's the lot line relocation. Mr. Weber?
Yes. Just a minute, a second. Bradford J. Hill Ratification Trust. New business number 5. That the plan meets subdivision NRO 190, 138G with one waiver request, 190, 221C, which requires underground utilities for new subdivision, is granted and will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. 4 through 8 as written.
Or 2 through 8?
Sorry?
2
2
through 8.
through 8. Thank
Okay,
you for that
thanks.
correction.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Weber to approve with the waiver is granted, will not be contrary, and the remaining staff stipulations as indicated. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Second by Alderman Tenza. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None. That motion passes. With regard to the site plan, number 6,
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Weber?
Got to do my secretarial first. New business site plan number 6, location 14 Broad Street. Finding the plan meets NRO 190, 146D. With 2 waiver requests. First being 190, 279J, which requires existing condition of plan, is granted and will not be contrary in spirit and intent of the regulation. Number 2, request for waiver, Article 27, landscaping, is granted and will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. 3, as written, 4, all dumpsters will be enclosed per ordinance, city ordinance.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve by Mr. Weber with the 2 waivers also being approved and the 4th additional stipulation beyond the staff. It's 3 stipulations. Do we have a second on that? Second by Mr. Peterson. Any discussion? All is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to case number, let me just go down the list here. So case number 7, that's to be postponed to our October 4th meeting. Case number 8, Edgestone Properties owner, application and acceptance of proposed 39-unit housing for older persons developed along with the community building and site improvements. This property is located at 65 and 69 Gilson Road, located in Ward 5. Do I have a motion that this case number 8 is ready for us to take jurisdiction?
So moved.
So we have a motion to take jurisdiction. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Varley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. All right.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. For the record, my name is Jim Petropoulos. I'm a civil engineer at Hayner Swanson, doing business at 3 Congress Street in Nashua, New Hampshire. Tonight, representing Edgestone Properties. With me is Kevin Slattery, the president of Edgestone Properties. Morgan Hollis is our project attorney, and Eric Teal is our environmental consultant. And as just read in the record, we're seeking a site plan approval for a housing for older persons project on property on Gilson Road in the southwest part of Nashua. My job here tonight, as always, is to present the facts of the project and then answer any questions you or the public may have. Let's get you located with this property. There are 2 lots involved, located at 65 and 69 Gilson Road. And of course, Gilson Road runs kind of east-west from New Hampshire Route 111A to New Hampshire Route 111, indirectly to the west. And as can be seen on the aerials that I've got up on the screens, as well as the aerial I pinned up to the board, our property is identified in yellow. To the west is Lyle Reed Brook, a beautiful wetland brook course that runs through our westerly property line. To the north is land owned by New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, NHDES, as I will call them tonight. The city of Nashua owns this building here along Gilson Road. Across Gilson Road is Southwest Park, city-owned land. And if you're familiar at all with this part of Nashua, there is generally a mix of different housing styles. There's some mobile and manufactured homes throughout the southwest part of Nashua, as well as some single-family homes. In yellow totals about 13.36 acres with almost 900 feet of frontage along Gilson Road, and we're located in the R30 zone. We're also located in an overlay district known as the Fort Hills Landfill Groundwater Overlay Zone, Groundwater Management Zone, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The Thompson family has owned this property for many years and have lived upon the property. And if you look closely at our surveys or look closely at the aerials, you'll see several single-family home, or a single-family home with several structures in the center part of the site. In 2004, we appeared before this board and created a 2-acre lot right here that one of the Thompson daughter lives upon. The majority of the site, as you can see, is fairly open. Along the westerly border, along Lyle Reed Brook, is currently wooded. The topography of the site, I don't know if you had a chance to get out to look at the property, but it's a moderate topography, a general slope from east to west towards Lyle Reed Brook. We performed numerous test pits on the site, and it's very sandy soil in the area. There's no wetlands in the main body of the site other than Lyle Reed Brook, again, to the west, and its 40-foot accompanying buffer. As I mentioned at the onset, the land owned to the north is owned by New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Now, Mr. Chairman, I typically don't spend a time talking about abutting properties, but I think for the benefit of the board, it might help. I don't know if board members are familiar with that adjacent property. It's the former Sylvester Superfund site. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. It's 26 acres in size. It was a former gravel pit and trucking company that got involved in the disposal of hazardous materials in the 60s and 70s. And in the early 1980s, the contaminated became detected, and appropriate authorities came in. They designated this as a Superfund site, and cleanup began in the early 80s. Some of the measures for that site off our property, they completely fenced in the property. They installed municipal water throughout the southwest part of Nashua, okay, clean drinking water. They constructed a underground slurry wall, which is essentially a barrier 3 feet wide, in some depths down to 100 feet. And that's really to prevent groundwater from moving towards Lyle Reed Brook. And what they did is they blocked groundwater from moving that way. They put in some piping to extract the water out. And this building was constructed as a treatment facility for that water. So they extracted and cleaned it. And over maybe a 14-year period, I think they cleaned some 1.2 billion gallons of water. The site has currently been cleaned. The site is ceased operations of any environmental cleanup in 1996. New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services owns the property, and they currently maintain it, and periodically they'll come out and test the site. I think it's worth saying that there's never has been any contamination upon the site we're talking about tonight, the Thompson property. Nor has there been any testing program or reclamation effort upon that property. This building, the former treatment plant building, you may know that the city purchased this in 2008, and they currently use it for storage of various departments throughout the city, I think primarily for Park Rec. So what we're proposing tonight is shown on the drawing here to the right. It is a housing for older persons project in accordance with your Land Use Code Section 19042. And the project is to be named Thompson's Preserve. It is to be a condominium form of ownership with private roads. What is being proposed are 39 detached dwelling units of less than 1,000 square feet. And that's a density of 3 units per acre as allowed by code. 32 of the units will have 2-car garages. 7 units will have 1-car garage. Access to the project is off of Gilson Road. What we're proposing is a private road, pasture lane, which will loop back in 2 locations, and a small cul-de-sac, paddock circle here in the northwest corner of the site. We're proposing along the frontage of the property a 5-foot paved sidewalk that runs from one end to the other. And if you're familiar with Gilson Road, or you're familiar with some of the other projects, Tanglewood, for instance, right up the road, a paved way was constructed off pavement and in kind of the wooded areas, and actually it's a nice benefit. I think a lot of people use that. The units will be serviced by municipal water. There's no sanitary sewer in this part of Nashua, so individual septic systems. Some of the systems will be combined with the units, but each unit will have its own septic tank. All of the utilities, sir, Mr. Chairman, are underground. Power, telephone, and gas is being extended to the site. The remaining land throughout the project becomes open space to the project and is maintained as part of the condominium association. As you know, I like to talk a little bit about stormwater with the projects. We are taking advantage of this wonderful sandy soil out on site. We have 9 local discharge points, recharge points throughout the project, where we're controlling water, point source, putting it back into the ground. The main roads we're collecting with curbing and catch basins, and we're constructing a stormwater management pond, a constructed wetland here in the west part of the site. That constructed wetland will consist of some forebays to filter out suspended solids, combination of open water and shallow marshes, which help cleanse the water, and there's ample storage there to handle the peak rates coming off this proposed development. Mr. Chairman, we did include a traffic report in our study, and as you can probably tell, a project of this size doesn't meet the thresholds of a full study. That information was part of our application, but just to give the board a certain sense, you know, traffic is measured during the morning peak and the afternoon peak, called a peak hour. And during that hour period in the morning, there's about 20 new trips being created from this project, and in the afternoon, there's about 23 new trips being created. Sight distance of both locations are good along Gilson Road. The traffic consultant did detect some clearing that needs to be done looking inward from this curb cut looking east and from this curb cut looking west, and we can certainly do that upon our property. With regards to the units themselves, I've got a small sketch up there. I'm sure you're familiar with Edgestone's product. Hayden Green would be a good example of the single-family homes. Low-profile homes, pitched roofs, traditional New England-style architecture. Each unit will contain a basement. It would be our client's hope to begin construction in the fall of 2018. Now, Mr. Chairman, as I wind down here, I want to touch upon a waiver request. I did submit a former letter to you on September 5th, and of course, the night wouldn't be complete without another sidewalk waiver, I guess. But I'd like to explain this waiver. We are seeking a waiver of section 192.12, which requires sidewalk to be built on at least one side of a new street. And so what the code said is, hey, you know, you have to build sidewalk along pasture and along paddock. In working with Edgestone and their vast experience in these types of projects, I think Kevin told me today he's built over 555 plus units in Greater Nashua. I mean, that's very, very impressive. So he knows these projects. We are seeking a waiver so that we do not construct sidewalks within the private streets. Those streets are 28 feet wide. What we are proposing as part of this request, of course, is to construct that 5-foot sidewalk along the entire frontage of the property, here as I've shown on the drawing. But in addition, Mr. Chairman, what we think is a great benefit to the southwest part of Nashua and also to the project, no doubt, we'd like to extend that sidewalk from our curb cut here westerly about 900 feet down Gilson Road to connect right to this point right here where there currently is sidewalk. And why that connection is important is because it enables a missing link of sidewalk along Gilson Road right now to get to the Nashua to Air Rail Trail, which is a great asset here for the city of Nashua, as we all know. So the basis for our waiver not to construct sidewalks within the project is Edgestone's experience, 28 feet wide, low-traffic roads, you know, there's no through traffic through those roads, it's just project traffic. But the focus is along the frontage of the property here, and then that extended connection to the rail trail here. And we put that forth in our waiver letter. In summary, Mr. Chairman, we feel the project complies. It's a responsible way to develop the property. We feel it complies with 19042. Mr. Slattery has spoke to NHDES officials and made them aware of this project. He's had a number of discussions and meetings with them. DES has no objection to our project. They asked for a couple little things. They wanted a gate installed, and they wanted some protection of some fence, a fence easement along this edge here. And there's actually 3 1-inch wells, 1.5-inch wells located way up in this corner that they want to continue to test. And Mr. Slattery has agreed to those 3 conditions, working with DES. Also took a meeting with the Board of Health officer because it's a unique project because of its proximity to our abutter. And the Board of Health officer penned a letter, I think it's in your packet, basically reinforcing the conditions of the Fort Hills landfill groundwater management zone, which essentially doesn't want you to extract water out of the ground for wells, you know. And there's a couple other items in there which are fine. Lastly, the conditions as set forth in the staff report are agreeable to us. And at this time, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Again, I've got Mr. Slattery, Mr. Hollis, and Mr. Teal here if there's something that I can't answer. So, thank you.
So I just have a couple questions maybe you could cover. Trash handling?
Sure.
What's the proposed
Yeah,
method?
curbside pickup. There'll be no dumpsters throughout the project. It'll be curbside pickup.
Okay. And will the city go through that
No,
development?
that's a private collection
So it's
agency.
private collection, curbside?
Yeah.
No dumpsters? Snow removal, control?
Same thing, you know, they'll hire a management group as they do to manage the property, and they'll come out. You know, it's, Mr. Chairman, it's likely just to be cast off and the driveway's maintained, and if it gets too heavy, they're gonna have to probably come in with a dump truck and haul some of it away. But, you know, there's ample room out there in the property for snow, sure.
Okay. How about road construction standards within the development itself? You mentioned they're gonna be full 28.
28 feet wide, which the fire
As far as
department,
the construction standard that you're following for?
yeah, same typical section, 28 feet wide, I think was looked upon favorably by the fire department. I think they like the slightly wider roads, yep.
Okay. And the only other question I had, just was looking at the plans, it looked like they were proposing like high-pressure sodium lighting.
Yes, they are.
Is there a reason why they don't want a LED? I mean, it's kind of, I feel like we've had a bunch of developments start with high-pressure sodium and
Yeah.
then change to LED pretty quickly.
I think it's personal preference. I think Edgestone has used high-pressure sodium throughout. I think they like the program. I think they like the service that they get through Eversource with them. So,
Okay.
I think those are the reasons why.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant? Ms.
Just a
Harper?
quick one.
Yeah.
Can you just confirm that the HOA is gonna be, maintaining the septic tanks or?
Yeah, yeah, certainly it's a requirement in the code, National Land Use Code on septic, for systems like this. So the condominium association will have documents. In fact, some of the state review agencies for the septic have asked for that already. So
Thank you.
all that is maintained by the association.
Okay.
And we like the notion of individual septic tanks, so that they can't say, hey, you know, you're dumping french fries down the drain.
Yeah.
You know, people have a little bit of control, and I think they like that. Some of the fields are combined, though. Yep.
Mr. Peterson?
Could you please clarify how far down the proposed sidewalk will go? Will it reach Countryside, or?
So sidewalk currently ends, I think it's slightly past Countryside. Sidewalk currently ends right about where my laser beam is, right here. And it is 900 feet west of the closest corner of the subject site. Over the years, there's been subdivisions on Gilson Road where they've actually built pieces, and if you ever want to use this as an example of getting segments built, this is a good one, because segments were built here, and now they're kind of getting connected, and there's great connection here from this all the way up to the city property. Don't forget, Southwest Park across the street has tremendous trails through that as well. And so, you know, it's not exactly to Tanglewood, there's still a little bit of a gap there, but I think it's a great connection.
Will there be a crosswalk that goes from the north side of Gilson over to the rail trail?
There already is.
There's a crosswalk there.
There already is there.
So your road will go to that crosswalk where they?
Our
can
sidewalk
cross?
will connect to the side. There's about another 1,000 feet of sidewalk to get to the rail trail. In other words, from our corner of the property to the rail trail is about 1,700 feet. So there's 800 feet already built north of Gilson Road. We're building another 900, plus 700 across our frontage, so we're building 1,600 feet.
So they can cross the street, it'll be marked?
Yes, it's already crossing. There's a crossing there right now, yeah.
Okay, so where will the mailboxes be for this development?
Yeah, there's a community building located right in the center of the property, and we have set a community mailbox panel there, and there's a couple parking spaces in front of that community building. So generally, the way it'll work is people either walk to the mailbox and say hello in the morning, or if they're driving through,
So the
they'll
senior
pull in.
citizens would have to leave their home to go to
Yeah.
the mailbox every day?
It's a preferred method by the post office.
I know it's convenient for the post office, but if you're an elderly person in the winter, that's not convenient.
Other questions for the applicant? Mr. Weber?
Yes. In the past, on these that you guys have done, handicap impaired people without a sidewalk, have they had no problem? It is a wide, and I see where I'm at now, it doesn't seem to be a problem, but we do have sidewalks where I live. But I like the other exchange that you're doing. Is the bus do the bus transit come by the street?
I do not know the answer to that. Sorry.
It would be probably good to, if it did, you know?
We could look into it. Obviously, it would be a nice marketing piece for the project, sure.
Yeah, it would be. Thank you.
Mr. Varley?
I just had a quick question about, looking, we just got this tonight, but there's the Thompson's Preserve Condo Directory of Facilities and Services, and it references a bunch of local services available. I just wanted to clarify, are there services being offered or provided on-site that you're anticipating at this time?
You mean other than the connected rail trail? You know, it's always tough, you know, this process, we're the first guys in, you know, we're before you were early, and you know, it's one of the first approvals, and Mr. Slattery will continue to move forward with the project. The regs like to see the condo docs early. They want to ensure that we're in compliance with the RSAs in terms of housing for older persons, and that's why they're in there. I think the answer to the question is, yeah, sure, I'm sure there's other things. Now, if you're asking, are there tennis courts, are there bocce courts, no.
No, I meant more, you know, because it looks like there's a community building, you know, I'm just wondering, or, you know, is it anticipated in, as you said, Mr. Slattery's done a number of these developments before, so I'm just curious as to, is there sort of a, you know, a set group of, you know, things that are typically offered in his developments of this kind?
I think the way they're used from what I see is that there's services available, it's a community space, there's gathering opportunities, and I think there's also opportunities if, you know, grandma had a birthday party and they wanted to have 15 people there, they could hold it in the community building. And I think that's a great opportunity for the residents there. So if I find from Kevin that there's other things, I can come back on rebuttal and fill those in, sure.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions? Are the buildings being proposed to be sprinkled?
No.
They're not?
No.
Okay. I'm assuming there was significant discussions with the fire department, but they didn't bring that up at all in
No.
those discussions. Okay, any other questions for the applicant right now? No?
All right, thank you.
At this point, I'd ask if there's anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition or concern with the plan, or just have questions, please come forward and state your name and. Okay. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the plan? All right. Seeing none, from the board here, any further questions of the applicant or staff during the hearing?
So I did, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Sure,
I did,
go ahead.
Kevin just whispered to me, there'll be fitness equipment inside the community building. So I wanted to put that on the record, too. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I
Mr.
do-
Peterson?
I do have a comment,
Sure.
but I could save it for our discussion or present it to the applicant, but I think a lot of these elderly people don't get around well. They have walkers, wheelchairs, or whatever. To have to go out and get your mail every day, for some of these people, it could be a huge inconvenience. And I think they need mailboxes at each door.
Okay. All right.
Maybe convenient for the post office, but
Yeah.
if grandma has to go down there to get her mail every day, that's a pain.
Okay. Other questions, comments while we're in the hearing? No?
I had one question.
Go ahead, Ms. Arbor.
I was just looking at this letter that was received from another resident on Gilson Road asking if it would be possible to have the gas lines extended down Gilson Road, and I was just curious if that had been considered.
Jim Petropoulos for the record. Gas is being extended. Currently, it exists way up near Tanglewood, so it's being extended and terminated here. The gentleman who asked the question lives in this house right here. He's only a couple hundred feet away, and Mr. Slattery spoke to him today. And I think the gentleman, if I may, was encouraged to hear that it was going to be that much closer to his facility, his house. If I may, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Peterson's comment is a good comment. It's a valid comment. Mr. Slattery just whispered to me, he says, you know, this is standard, the community mailbox, and it's standard throughout the projects, and they've never had an issue with it before, so.
It's standard for senior housing?
Yeah, 55 and older housing. And I can tell you, my mom and dad live in one of his facilities in Hudson, and they go out and get their mail every day, so, and they're pushing on in years, so.
With
But
regard,
anyway, that's the message he communicated to me, that it's standard practice, yeah.
with regard to the gas line, I assume they're gonna leave it with a stub and a cap, so it could go
Yeah.
further.
Yeah, and the gentleman's more than welcome to reach out to the gas company.
Yeah, I mean, that would be extended by the gas
yeah.
company anyway.
Gilson Road is intended to be improved sometime, I believe, in next year, in 2019. So it's timely we get the gas in and the sidewalk in advance of that new paving
Okay.
for Gilson Road. Yep.
Other questions for the applicant, or we're still have the hearing open? No? Okay,
Thank
thanks. So at this time, I'll close the public hearing, move to the public meeting. So we have this development in front of us, Gilson Road. We talked about the site a little bit. I think that's been talked about in the past some. No local, no butters with any sort of concerns at this point, so. Any other talking points for anybody? Mr. Varley?
I just comment on the sidewalk proposal. I mean, I think we've seen other developments like this where a request has been made either for no sidewalks or limited sidewalks within the development, given, you know, the nature of the proposal. And, I mean, I tend to agree. I think, you know, it's probably less necessary inside the development, and I think it's a great trade-off to get the sidewalk not just along that frontage, but also to connect, so you have that, almost a full connection then down Gilson to the to the rail trail.
Yeah, I'd probably echo that. It's probably our only shot at getting that connection. You could probably get it inside the development later if it was required, but I don't think there'll be another development of this size that'll give us that extension.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of that as well. Alderman Tenza?
I'm in favor of
Yeah.
it as well. I mean, anyone who's been down to the rail trail on a Saturday or Sunday morning knows that there's no parking, so whatever opportunities we can provide people to safely get there, another way to access the bike, to access the rail trail is a great idea, and appreciate the forward thinking of the project in connecting for as much as they could.
Mr. Peterson?
And
Yep.
looking back at previous applications, one of the reasons why those soccer fields were disapproved or not approved was because there were no sidewalks on that road for all those kids to go to and from the soccer games. So if the sidewalks are there, it makes it easier to put forth other projects.
Okay.
But I have another comment.
Sure.
I really think not having mailboxes at the houses, that's gonna be inconvenient. A lot of these people can barely go from one end of the house to the other, never having to go down and get your mail every day in the wintertime. It's in my personal opinion.
Okay. Mr. Weber?
There's been applications before us before that had 24 feet, and we really didn't like it, and we thought it was better if they had, more sidewalks and stuff like that, and some of them did, but having a 28-foot street and this type of neighborhood, I really don't see a problem because of the width of the street. I think people, whether they're impaired or they have a walker, are going to will not have a problem because of the low volume of traffic going on this street. And I understand what Mr. Peterson is talking about, but a person who's elderly, when they look at these houses, they understand where they're going. A person that can't get out of their, can't really walk that well, they're not going to go and buy into this neighborhood because there is a requirement for them to get to the place, get back to their house. They're going to understand that going into the project, so they won't really buy to that. And they'll go to an elderly house that that takes care of all that for them. So I think it's a great place.
Mr. Peterson?
Regarding two things that Mr. Weber said. The 28-foot road is really good because that allows on-street parking, 24-foot. You can't do that. You can't even have your friends come over because they couldn't park in the street with a 24-foot road. So 28 is good. And as far as people's ability to get about, you may move them when you're 65, but when you're 75, then it's a whole different ballgame. So a lot of these people, they're only going to get older and less mobile. And having to walk down to the mailbox every day is an inconvenience.
Ms. Harper?
Just to make a quick comment, I don't know if it'll make you feel better, but I've managed properties like this before, and it actually becomes a social event, it seems, the mailbox area. People go to socialize, and with these small communities, they tend to be pretty tight-knit. People will, if someone's sick, people will bring soup to the, it's that kind of environment.
So your neighbor will pick up your mail for you?
Yes, exactly. And it's social.
And they'll bring coffee.
They could.
Any other comments? No? Anybody willing to make a motion? All right. In regard to the motion, I think we did have one waiver. Yeah, I guess the sidewalk one, I don't know if we need to, maybe this is a question for staff. Do we need to explain the sort of swap, if you will, or I guess it's written into the to the plan, so I guess we can.
It is written into the plan, and it also comes with the correspondence on the
Right,
waivers.
right, so I think it's clear, yeah.
And just to
Yeah.
clarify, to your point, Scott, how does that work with the extension of the sidewalk? Is that technically outside of the plan? I mean, because it's not on the plan, right? So,
I'd defer to Roger on that.
I believe Pete Kalami from the engineering department is here tonight. They would have submitted, I believe, construction drawings, Jim, if you want to.
We're in the meeting, so, I don't know.
You're still in the meeting, you haven't gone into public hearing yet.
yeah, I mean,
No,
and I'm-
we're in.
You need to
Yeah.
get back,
We're in the meeting.
I
don't
mean,
think-
I'm not concerned about it. I was just,
yeah. They would have submitted construction drawings for that
Okay.
sidewalk
That's
to
fine.
engineering to be approved.
Yeah, I was wondering how it's.
Oh, yeah, they need to have it, I guess they have not submitted those drawings, but they need, you could make it subject to that approval, condition that they provide plans to the engineering department for the sidewalk, extension to the existing sidewalk.
Great. Anybody, I guess, need a second to get a motion together? All right. Mr. Barley?
I'll make a motion to approve new business number 8, site plan, owner Edgestone Properties, Inc., proposed plan to construct 39 units of elderly housing to be solely occupied by those 55 and over, located at 65 Gilson Road. Finding that the plan does meet the requirements outlined in site plan NRO section 190-146D, with a total of 12 stipulations. The first being a waiver request reading, is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation, and just adding the following clarification that the applicant will provide plans to the engineering department regarding the extension of the sidewalk beyond the boundaries of the site prior to construction. And then stipulations 2 through 12, reading as written in the staff report.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve by Mr. Varley with the 12 stipulations as discussed, or as stated. Do we have a second on that motion?
Second?
Second by Alderman Tenza. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Okay, we're gonna move on to case number 9. It's a new business site plan, Pine Hill Garden Associates owner, application and acceptance of proposed 8-unit multifamily residential building and accompanying site improvements. Property is located at 32 Pine Hill Road. This is located in Ward 1. Can I have a motion from the board that this application is ready to take jurisdiction or not?
So moved.
Which one? Ready to take jurisdiction?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a
Ready to
motion to
take
take
jurisdiction.
jurisdiction, a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Harper. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jim Petropoulos. I'm a civil engineer with Hayner Swanson at 3 Congress Street, here in Nashua, New Hampshire, tonight representing Pine Hill Garden Associates, seeking a site plan for a piece of property located on Pine Hill Road, which of course is in the northwest part of Nashua. And I'll be presenting the facts of the project. The subject site is located at 32 Pine Hill Road, which is property on the south side of that road, just west of the Everett Turnpike. And of course, I put up on the screen as well as the board. Here's the Everett Turnpike. Here's Pine Hill Road Bridge. This is the railroad bridge here. This is Cypress Lane, which essentially is a public road that feeds into Pine Hill Gardens. We have our subject site here, 0.65 acres, bordered in yellow, right at the corner of Cypress and Pine Hill Road. Our abutters to the property is a Eversource power station located just to the west, Pine Hill Road to the north, and again, Cypress and Pine Hill Gardens surround us to the south and to the east. This land is located RC, which is a high-density urban zone, and it's 0.65 acres in size. For many years, this property was a single-family home, contained a house, a garage, 2 driveways coming in and out of Pine Hill Road. The topography is fairly slight. There's a gentle slope from the high end, which is on the south side of the property, grading towards Pine Hill Road here. Sandy soils in this part of Nashua. No wetlands on the property, and various utilities to service the project are located in or near Pine Hill Road. What's being proposed is shown on the site plan here, up on the board, to redevelop the site by eliminating the house and garage and driveway, which I think has already been done, and construction of an 8-unit townhouse building. RC zoning allows for 12.5 units per acre to be constructed. This yields 8 units for this property, and that's what's being proposed. The driveway will be a single driveway access, 24 feet in width here on Pine Hill Road, with the driveway entering the property with 16 parking spaces located in front of the townhouse building. The townhouse is oriented in a north-south fashion with the front facing both Pine Hill and Cypress, and the backs of the units to the Eversource substation located abutting us to the west. Each townhouse will be 2 stories in height and measure approximately 1,300 square feet in size, plus contain a full basement. This will be a rental property. Again, I mentioned our client is Pine Hill Garden Associates. They own the Pine Hill Gardens apartments to the south, and they purchased this property, and they will maintain it because of its proximity to the larger project. We have good soils on the property, so we're proposing to collect our roof water and our pavement water with curbing and catch basins, and install a subsurface stormwater system right here in the grassed area in the front of the site. A traffic study was submitted, Mr. Chairman, but the trips are very, very low, meeting the threshold. Site distance for the driveway is good. We are proposing sidewalk both along our frontage, across our driveway, and actually sidewalk, when they built the bridge, they put sidewalk in over the bridge, but there is no sidewalk in Pine Hill Road as it loops back to Broad Street. So rather than just build it across our frontage, we're also going to make another, I guess, 50-foot link and crosswalk to the sidewalk, which is located right about here for the bridge. So we are building sidewalk in front of our property to the sidewalk to the east. New lighting and landscape proposed as part of the project. There is an architectural elevation drawing that I brought here. You can see the traditional townhouse structure, pitched roofs, mix of material, exterior sheathing materials, kind of a traditional townhouse look, canopied entries. Each unit will have a deck in the back, and this building will be stepped to work with the grade at a midpoint to kind of work with the site topography. We are asking for one waiver, Mr. Chairman, and this waiver has to do with parking. Your Nashua Land Use Code for projects such as this requires 1.9 parking spaces per unit. So when you do the math on 8 units, it comes out to 15 spaces. We like the number 16. It gives equal 2 spaces kind of per unit. That will avoid a lot a lot of arguments, we think, in the parking lot. So I'm asking a waiver to add one more parking space. The basis for the waiver is we think it does not detract from the aesthetics of the site, and I think 2 per unit is a very fair request. In summary, the conditions outlined in the staff report are fine and acceptable. We believe the application is complete, and we seek your approval, and be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks. I have one question on my end. The overhead electric coming out of the substation there, does it actually cut across the corner of the lot? Like from the aerial, it actually kind of looks like it does. I mean, it's pretty close to that corner, but that top left as you're drawn up there. I'm just wondering, you have some proposed landscape, like a tree proposed to go up there, which would essentially be underneath the power lines.
Okay.
And I don't know
So-
what the distance those
Yeah.
lines are off the back of the house. too.
So, Mr. Chairman, our sheet 2 of 11 shows the overhead lines that emanate from the substation. They are slightly off our property.
Yeah.
But if, let me just look at the landscape plan. If we've got a tree over in that area, yeah, I think that's
You wanna
something.
look at that.
Yeah, we show the crown of a full mature species of that tree, so there's probably a 10-foot difference. If we want to inch it over to give it a little bit more room, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah,
that
I
tree.
think it's just, it looks like the aerial that we have that
Yeah.
has the boundary,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell, but.
Yeah.
Do you have a feel for the distance between the back of the house and the lines?
Oh, sure.
You know, is it,
So the back of the proposed condominiums?
yeah.
To the
in
property line?
Overhead line.
Oh, to the overhead lines. I'm going to guess it's approximately 30-plus feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay. I might just check those closely.
Pardon?
I think I might just check that closely when you're on the landscape component.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Other questions? Ms. Harper?
Just a couple of quick questions about parking. Is there a visitor parking lot nearby?
Nearby?
Well, for these
For this
particular
project?
residents, for their visitors?
No, it's pretty tight, so it's 2 spaces per unit, yeah. So 16, if you're asking, is there room for more, I'm tending to think no, unless we widened the pavement and maybe gave a couple parallel spaces, but as a 24-foot
Yeah, well, that's what I'm
interior.
worried about, visitors just driving in and parking, because there's nowhere
Okay.
to go,
Okay.
I guess.
Let me just look at something. I've got a couple of feet there, I could kind of widen pavement, then I'm penetrating into, well, actually, that's a side yard setback. I could probably widen a few feet on this side just and maybe do it in such a manner that would kind of look as if you would pull off to the side, almost parallel park along that. Is that what you're thinking about?
Well, because it's 24 feet, I'm thinking about fire trucks coming in and, visitors parking there and,
Yeah,
that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
yeah, it's a good point. Well, let me think about that for a sec.
Okay. Thank you.
So may I just follow up on that? To
Sure.
the south,
Alderman Tenza? Yep.
thank you, sorry. To the south there is Pine Hill Gardens, and there
Yes.
are parking spots there. Is it possible to direct visitor parking, or are those already?
Great idea, actually. I think if you look at the aerials, I think there is a fairly large parking area right here. And given the same ownership, maybe there's an opportunity to do that, or at least direct the residents that if you need surplus parking to go there. Thank you.
that'd be
Yeah,
great.
that's great. I appreciate that.
I don't know if that detracts from the other buildings if they need that parking, but, maybe
That's a good idea.
solution.
Yep.
Can I just make a?
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Actually, this is a comment, so I don't want to take away, it's not a question for the presenter.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant, Mr. Weber?
Thank you. Looking at the the slope of the pavement and the catch basin, have you found that, well, there has been problems with catch basins in the city because of sharp slopes, that it really doesn't always end up in the catch basin, or if it's overdone, and it goes out onto, like, this would be Pine Hill Road. Do you foresee, or have you, with your experience, when you have this kind of a contour of a driveway, it's 2
Yeah,
feet, you know?
The pitch is, I would say the pitch is not extraordinary. It's about 3.5% to 4%, so it's reasonable pitch. I think your comment is, geez, Jim, you got a catch basin down at the end. If all this water, if they don't build it right, it misses, all that water's going out in Pine Hill Road.
Yes,
And
that's
you're
my
correct,
concern.
and I'm sure that has happened in other projects. So, special care needs to be taken. One thing we could do there is make that a double grate catch basin, so that it gets out there a little bit. It just further helps, so easy a caveman could do it, I think, is the way the commercial goes.
One of the
so.
things, just as a comment, I had my driveway done a few years ago, and it's a slope, and it's a steep slope.
Yeah,
Yet, the way that the people put it on the paver, the people that did the paving, not one water goes out onto the street. It's tipped so good
yeah.
that it goes onto the grass.
Okay.
Even though it's heavily tilted, it all goes onto the grass, it doesn't go on the street.
Well, I like we got a straight shot to a gutter line with the curb here. I kind of like that. I think we're going to push it right up against that curb. So I think your point is, boy, we don't want that water out in the street, and I would agree.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? Anyone? No? Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
At this point, I'd like to ask if there's anybody wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan. Please go ahead and come forward and state your name and address. Anybody?
Hi, my name is Jeff Currier, and I live at 38 Pine Hill Road, which is on the other side of the Eversource's power station, basically. Only my big concern is that I'm at 38 Pine Hill Road, and I'm still on basically a well. And my brother lives right next to me at 40 Pine Hill Road. He's on a well too, but my biggest concern is the water main goes around onto Cypress all the way to Pine Hill Road, basically. So I was hoping to see if we could do something like probably get the water main basically up towards us, because the well's good now, but basically I'm pretty sure it's going to dry up shortly, and I think that's probably about it. My concerns at this point.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right.
Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan? Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the plan? Jimmy, you want to address the water main?
Sure. Jim Petropoulos. I spoke to Mr. Courier during break, and he was kind enough to express his interest in water and his thoughts. And what I told him is this, that currently there's an 8-inch main that goes over the Everett through Pine Hill Road, and then it turns 90 degrees and runs up Cypress through Pine Hill Gardens, and I think there's another street back here that connects back to Pine Hill Road. High Pine Drive, yes, thank you. And Mr. Courier lives, and he and his brother live right here, and somehow there's a gap there. Water is not connected all the way through. We are extending water from about right here to about right here, so we're headed west. We're probably just under 200 feet of water main extension, and we're getting closer to Mr. Courier, so I expressed to him that I thought if he gave Pennachuck Water a call and asked them, hey, what can you do for me and your brother? And What are your plans about ever extending that? And I think Penachuk would have more information than we could, but I think we're getting domestic water, we're getting municipal water much closer to Mr. Curry and his brother.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the applicant from anyone concerned or with the plan? No? Okay. Any further questions of the applicant for the board or of staff from the board? Okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing then for this, move into the public meeting. So, comments? Alderman Tensley, you got a comment? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was just gonna, again, say, you know, one of the things that people are looking for when they're moving into a community is ease of transportation without having to get in their car. So I just wanted to credit, again, Mr. Petropoulos and his clients for recognizing that, you know, people, by building the sidewalks and connecting them, they're gonna make it more attractive for people to wanna live in the units they're developing. So that was my only comment.
Okay, great. Any other comments or questions internally in the meeting? No? Anybody ready to make a motion?
Make a motion, or you can make a motion.
Mr. Varley?
I'll make a motion
Okay.
to approve new business number 9, site plan. Owner Pine Hill Garden Associates, proposed site plan to construct an 8-unit multifamily residential building on 32 Pine Hill Road. Finding that the plan does meet the requirements outlined in site plan NRO section 190-146D. The total of 4 stipulations. The first being a waiver request, reading is granted will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation, and the stipulations 2 through 4 as written in the staff report.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve with the stipulations as stated by Mr. Varley. Do we have a second for that? Second by Alderman Tenza. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, so, continuing on with our agenda here. New business site plan number 10, that's postponed until November at this point. So, other business case number 1, review of tentative agenda to determine proposals of regional impact.
Yeah, I gotta go
So
get
we
it.
have a tentative agenda here.
I'll get them, Andy, sorry.
Anybody had a chance to look at that? Really 2 items on here. 41 Caldwell.
These
and-
new projects you're talking about?
Right,
Yeah, Chautauqua Avenue. I don't know where that second one is. Anybody know?
What is it?
Chautauqua
No, I know which
Avenue?
one though. Caldwell?
Yeah, Ward 4.
That's over by Fairgrounds, isn't it?
Nearby Fairgrounds.
what about the other
How about Caldwell Road?
Yeah.
Anybody know where that is?
Oh, yeah, I just looked that up.
Well, Chautauqua is probably down in the Indian Streets over off of Beaver.
That's,
Middle of things too. Yeah. Okay, all right.
that's, yeah, I mean, it's
Somebody make a motion
close,
then?
that's close enough.
Sorry.
I'll make a motion that, having reviewed the tentative agenda, determine that there are no proposals of regional impact.
Okay. So we have a motion that there are no proposals of regional impact. Do we have a second on it? Second by Mr. Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Okay. Other business case number 2. Referral from Board of Aldermen on proposed petition for street discontinuous. This is the portion of Conant Road. So we have additional information in our packet. We've talked about this a couple of times now. I think there was still some work on the city side last time around.
Right, Mr. Duker, and you have a copy of that in your packet.
Yep,
Sent a different plan to the board later today,
yep.
and we included that in your packet. I highlighted, there are just 2 areas that are being discontinued.
Right.
two lots on the, I think it's Katy Lane or something like that. They're highlighted in green on that map.
Yeah.
That's what's being proposed to be discontinued. That's the area that would go to the abutters.
Right.
But there were two other lots involved, so
They
those are
they
not-
are, but they aren't a part of the
by this.
discontinuance petition.
Got it.
The petition is by those two lot owners.
Just the two.
And the other two, the Toppins, and I forget the name of other one next to them, are not part of the petition before the Board of Aldermen.
Okay.
There's just the two lots involved.
Right. I think the last time there was an issue with the plan, like it was extending to the new position versus the old position or something.
Right, there seemed to be, and I can't describe how that's calculated. I believe Steve Dukran is not here tonight. He recommended favorably on the street discontinuance in his email to the board, as it is. There were some discrepancies in how that line was drawn based on how the law applies on that. That was corrected. The corrected plan is before you.
Yeah.
And there was a shift in, I guess, the one lot line for the abutter.
Yeah.
And that's all of the information I have. We received this, as I say, later today. So,
The only thing I would note is it's still, the plan has signature lines for the different parcel owners, and it still has all four of them on there. I don't know if the two that aren't, if they're not being affected by this, or maybe maybe that's still, they're abutters, I don't know.
you know, engineering requested that the person submitting the petition, the two individuals, show the entire length there of the road right-of-way, because there's going to be a jog in that right-of-way.
Right.
Since the other two aren't a part of this, the right-of-way will kind of dead end, and then it will be public land, or public right-of-way after that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So that's okay.
So it's a half dedication, but they wanted to see where the full line was in that location, as I understand engineering's perspective on that. I know Steve had asked Pete Kalame to be here at the meeting tonight if you had any questions. I believe he's in the back, but there may be an abutter in the back that might wish to speak too. I don't know.
Yeah, if there's a butter, or is there somebody, you're welcome to come forward and state your name and address for the record. Yep. I think we have, is it, yeah, I think it's a copy of something we already have in front of us.
My name's Ed Gilbertson, and I live at 121 Conant Road.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to go over some of the background, what Roger was going over, and that's some of the changes since the last time we were here was we were tabled because we did not have the utilities included. We
Right.
had only sewer and drain were shown. Now we have the electric, water, and the gas are shown. And then there was a change in the drawing of the line. The
Right.
reference we that had originally been used was the new road.
Right.
But you have to go perpendicular to the old road, since that's what's being discontinued the right of way. So that's been corrected.
Yep.
And so we're on revision 6 of the drawing. So
Okay.
that's every comment we've gotten, we've tried to incorporate.
Sure.
And
Okay.
and
Any
if
questions?
there's any questions.
Meg?
I don't have
Meg?
the original drawing in front of me, so I'm just curious, that the original line that we'd seen last time between your lot and your abutter at 123, now that has changed?
Yes, that was originally a straight line, and it was a little bit, we had a little bit more land in Area B that we would gain. So that's been moved over a little bit, and the abutter has gotten more of the land a little bit, and we've gotten, we get a little bit less, but but now it's correctly drawn legally the right way.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thanks. I think
Thank
we're
you.
all right, any other questions for city or anybody? If not, I'd take a motion. In this case, we do a motion to either,
Do you need to hear from the engineering department?
I don't know, does anybody have any questions? I think I'm all set, because Steve kind of explained it the last time around to us, but I don't know if there's anybody else still has a question.
I'm fine.
I think we're good. So anybody want to make a motion? So it would be a motion with regard to the referral, and it would be
Favorable.
a favorable or recommendation or an unfavorable, essentially. So that's the kind of language of the motion for anybody wishing to make one. Ed, you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion,
Okay.
and a positive referral to the Board of Aldermen for the street continuance of portion of Connaught Road.
Okay, so positive recommendation for
Yes.
the referral. All right. So we have a motion from Ed Weber for a positive recommendation on this referral for the street discontinuance. In case number, other business case number 2. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second by Ms. Harper. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Okay. All right, now we've got
Chickens.
the business case number 3.
Chickens!
Urban chickens specifically.
Urban
chicken.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Yeah.
So other business case number 3, referral from the Board of Aldermen on proposed O-18-019, amending the land use code by adding provisions regarding urban chickens. And I think this was in our packet. Do we have someone who wants to talk on that?
Yeah.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I may, there's a public hearing on this proposed ordinance for next week on the 18th at 7 PM in the chambers.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we postpone our discussions until after that, hearing has been.
Can I just ask?
Mr. Weber? Yep.
Yes, some of us might not be there, and we might have things that we'd like you to carry forward. And one of mine is, I've been around chickens when I was a kid. My son has chickens down in Franklin, and he had a rooster, and about a week later, they ate the rooster because it was too noisy. But there is, similar to what I'm kind of suggesting, who's going to, if a neighbor has a problem, they see 8 chickens there, how are they going to come to who are they going to see?
The chicken police.
Yeah, who's going to be the chicken police?
I've all,
I think you'll have the answer to your questions at your next meeting. Sarah Marchant said she wanted to be here. I think the aldermen supporting this. They could not be here tonight, and they'd requested that if you could wait until your meeting in October to discuss it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We'll try to get the minutes we'll get the minutes from the planning committee too, from the public hearing. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comment on this, with no jokes elaborated on here, but, chickens, it's a big topic, and,
Okay.
there'll be a lot of discussion on this, and a lot of those questions, enforcement-wise, will be addressed.
Okay. So, Alderman Tenzin, did you want to make a motion to table?
I would make a motion to table until the October 6th meeting, I believe.
See you in
October 4th.
October 4th.
October 4th, okay. So we have a motion by Alderman Tenza here to table this until our October 4th meeting. Any second on that? Second by Mr. Weber. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. That motion passes. Other business, case number 4, Planning Board appointment to the Capital Improvement Committee for 2-year term to expire August 1st, 2018. So maybe Roger, you can explain that.
Yes, as you know, Dan Kelly resigned from the board, and he served both on the National Regional Planning Commission representing the board, as well as on the Capital Improvements Committee. And I believe through discussions with a couple of board members have stepped forward to take on that responsibility. Ed Weber for the National Regional Planning Commission to represent the board, and of course Scott to represent the Planning Board with the CIC this year. Our next meeting, I think we're trying to schedule something for October 15th, Scott.
Okay.
because we got to get the process underway as for the next year budget system.
All right. So, questions? I mean, anybody on these? Ed, you? So this, we'll start with number 4. That would be for CIC. So we need a motion. Mr. Robbins.
I have a question.
Sure.
It appears as though your appointment has already expired.
Yeah, you're right. That's probably 2020.
You look pretty good. I hope you're okay.
I assume that it's 2 years from.
It's a 2-year term. It expires every 2 years.
Yeah.
I believe you reappointed Mr. Kelly. He's on a 2-year term right now, so.
Yeah, but this term would be from when to when? Now to,
It'll be, I think it's a 2-year term.
okay.
So we want to change
think we-
expires on the 18th. It's, on here, it's on 18,
It's just a
2018.
typo in the thing, yeah, yeah. We just say 2-year term. How's that?
2-year term, but the expire on 20, should be August 20.
It should be 2020, you're
2020.
correct.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion on that?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion to approve my appointment, I guess, the Capital Improvement Committee by Mr. Robbins. Is there a second on that? Second by Mr. Weber. Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'll abstain from that since my name's on it, so put 1 abstention there, Ed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Got 7, 6, 0, 1.
Okay. Then with regard to other business case number 5, Ed for Nashua Regional Planning Commission. Have a motion on that?
Make that motion.
Okay, so Ms. Harper, she's got a motion to approve Ed.
Second.
The second by Mr. Robbins. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Stamp.
1 abstention. Mr. Weber? Okay.
Thank you.
Discussion items? Anybody?
Can I bring up just
Sure.
one thing that we should all be aware of, because I think it's going to be a big issue coming before the board in the next year or so, is the Mohawk Tannery site. And what the plan is going forward, if there is a plan. There was a meeting tonight that the mayor held. There's been several meetings with the EPA. I think that there are going to be some ideas as to how to proceed with that project, I'm sure. And any of those ideas will have to come before the planning board. And so, to the extent that we could all be aware of it now, I think is a good thing, and prepare for that, because there's a lot of people who are passionate about it and have their ideas as to exactly how the project should be done. So I'm sure it'll be a longer discussion than one meeting, but just to make everyone aware of that.
Yeah. Are there any plans? Has anybody talked about coming forward to do like the discussion?
We have no applications yet. I understand that they might have to go before the alderman with a rezoning or something like that, or a major variance, and that would have to happen before it gets to this board. There may be Conservation Commission issues too, since it's near the river.
Yeah.
There may be wetlands. We don't know. We have not received an application with detailed plans.
Okay. But it's worth all of us being aware, right? That's a good point.
There's a lot of discussion right now, but,
Yep.
and they'd also have to get access through Fimmel Door, or they would have to go through the neighborhood. And that's another big issue. And that's access to Broad Street Parkway is controlled by the city currently.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion items? Okay, hearing
Move
none.
adjournment?
Anybody want to make a motion? Okay. So
He's right
motion to
on it.
adjourn. Oh, hang on, we got,
What about the non-public discussion about the
I don't think we have any non-public.
pending
ones.
legal stuff?
I don't think we have any.
No.
That's
No,
just,
we
that's
don't.
always an item on there if we need it.
If we wanted
Yeah.
to. If we needed
What
to.
about the letter we received, email we received recently saying be on standby in case you get called to go to court?
That is a completely different issue. That's, doesn't involve the planning board at all.
Does it?
No.
Say, I didn't get that letter.
I didn't get that letter.
Special
You're the lucky
letter
one.
for you, I guess. Not me. All right, so we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Robbins. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourns at 10:15, exactly. Thank you.